Part 47. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 461. Ling Yao and Lin Xiaoxiao looked at each other, and both frowned at the same time. Waiting for us. Lin Xiaoxiao was stunned for a moment before asking, "Excuse me, who are you?" "A saint, a person with a high status, my luck is really good." The young man sitting cross-legged did not answer their questions, but continued to talk to himself with a smile in his tone. Ling Yao and Lin Xiaoxiao looked at each other again, both a little puzzled. Where did this young man come from? Ling Yao slowly tightened the sword in her hand, and her vigilance in her heart became stronger. She had completely abandoned the idea that the other party was weak. Since the other party could sneak into their vicinity silently, he must be a strong person. "Sir, who are you? Why are you waiting for us here?" Ling Yao asked while being vigilant. She now felt that this young man sitting cross-legged was not in the normal range, and even gave her a mysterious illusion. This boy was like a sculpture, and there was an inexplicable evil aura on him, which made her feel terrified. But this feeling came and went quickly, as if it was just an illusion. When she wanted to feel it carefully again, she could not find it anywhere. Just when Ling Yao was puzzled, the boy sitting cross-legged slowly raised his head, revealing his true face, and smiled lightly. "Who am I?" "I am your destined calamity." "Huh." When Lin Xiaoxiao saw the appearance of the boy sitting cross-legged clearly, her beautiful eyes suddenly shone with a strange light. This was an extremely handsome man's face, with sharp edges and corners, and the contours of his facial features were clear and delicate, just like a knife and an axe, like the most outstanding work of art in heaven. No matter from which angle you look at it, you can't find the slightest flaw. The black clothes made him look like the king of the night, with a domineering aura, making him look wild and majestic, and every move was full of pressure. There was a faint flash of enchanting light in the corners of his eyes, and with his figure, he exuded a kind of evil charm. Lin Xiaoxiao was stunned and couldn't help but exclaimed, "This is a man who is perfect to the extreme just by looking at his appearance, which makes her feel heart beating." "Senior sister," she called softly. "Well, this man is so handsome," she couldn't help but praise. Ling Yao couldn't help rolling her eyes, thinking that this girl really didn't know how to be reserved, but she had to admit that the boy in front of her was indeed very heroic, and I'm afraid there are few people who can compare with him in the entire Piao Miao domain. But Ling Yao really couldn't understand what this boy wanted to do. Could it be that he fell in love with her? So he waited for her arrival here every day? When he finally saw himself here, he said, "I've been waiting for them for a long time." And what about "I am your destined calamity"? It's too corny. Ling Yao's cheeks were slightly red, and an image of an infatuated and romantic man suddenly emerged in her mind. He stayed on this beach every day just to see his beloved woman. The more Ling Yao thought about it, the more she felt that this possibility was greater. After all, she was the saint of Piao Miao Holy Palace, and she was so beautiful. Any man would be fascinated by her. Although Ling Yao had never been involved in any love affairs, she still understood this kind of thing. And the look in the boy's eyes when he looked at her was obviously not right. That kind of hot and wild feeling seemed to carry the desire to conquer, even a blind person could feel it. This was definitely not pretended, but it seemed to be from the heart, waiting for her all the time. Thinking of this, Ling Yao's cheeks were slightly red, and her heart began to beat wildly. This boy, obviously interested in her. Ling Yao made random guesses in her mind. In fact, it is not surprising that Ling Yao would think this way. The main reason is that the boy in front of her is too handsome, which makes her unable to help but think wildly. If it were any other girl, she would have been fascinated by him, just like the crazy Lin Xiaoxiao. Lin Xiaoxiao next to her forgot to be shy after being attracted by this boy. Her eyes were full of stars and she stared at him infatuatedly. But Ling Yao, after all, has practiced for many years and has great concentration. Although her heart is full of spring, she is still calm on the surface. She stares at the boy who suddenly appeared in front of her calmly and said lightly, "Sir, if you want to pursue me, please go back. I don't like you, so I hope you stay away from me." Qin Mu was stunned. What? Did he hear it wrong? He was obviously here to collect slaves. How come this woman suddenly became that he was confessing to her? Is it wrong? Bah! A lowly woman. Ling Yao continued, "If I remember correctly, I should have never met you, right? Also, your strength and background are not enough for me to be interested in. If you want to attract me with mystery, sorry, I won't fall for it." She spoke slowly and calmly, with a look of wisdom and control over the situation. She didn't believe that the other party would give up so easily, so she decided to test the boy's strength and background with this provocative words to see what the boy's background was. If the other party gave up easily, then she would choose to leave. Although this boy was very handsome, he was not worthy of her nostalgia. If the strength and background shown by the other party are very strong, then it is not impossible for her to consider it. Maybe even the other party's background will help her seize the position of palace master in the future. Of course, Ling Yao's mental activities only passed by in an instant, and she was still calm on the surface. Qin Mu. As soon as Ling Yao said these words, even Qin Mu was stunned and did not recover for a long time. This was the first time he saw someone who was thicker-skinned than himself. What is this all about? Are all the saints in Piamiao Palace such weirdos? Seeing Qin Mu's silence, Ling Yao frowned slightly and quietly used her spiritual sense to observe Qin Mu. "Don't you want to pursue me? Why don't you even dare to say a word to me now?" Ling Yao frowned and said, "Forget it, I don't care who you are. I advise you not to pester me. Otherwise, the consequences will be disastrous. I am not someone you can afford to mess with. But since you can stop me here, it means that you must have considerable strength, but this is the area of the misty holy palace, and it is not your turn to run wild yet." Ling Yao sneered, "If you don't want to bring shame on yourself, you'd better leave immediately. If you piss me off, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." Ha! Qin Mu was dumbfounded. There must be nothing wrong with this woman's head. Qin Mu. He no longer knew what to say. The series of lines he originally prepared were of no use. Because the woman in front of her is simply weird and doesn't play by the rules at all. Lin Xiaoxiao, who had been watching, was also stunned. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the senior sister in front of him. Qin Mu took a deep breath, glanced at Ling Yao in front of him, and suddenly grinned. This smile immediately made Ling Yao's heart beat faster. She was sure that there was no one in the world who could smile more deliciously than the young man in front of her. But this smile gave her a dangerous feeling. "Humph, I'll give you one more chance. If you don't leave, don't blame me for being rude." Ling Yao snorted coldly, swiped her finger in the air, and a fiery red sword shadow rushed out of her body. Condensing he slashed the giant flaming sword towards Qin Mu. This flaming giant sword is Ling Yao's best move, the burning sky sword technique. She wanted to see if the other party was really unfathomable or if he was just pretending. If it's the former, then she will stage a love-hate drama where they don't know each other without fighting. If it's the latter, she's not a soft persimmon who can be rounded and squashed by the other party. Qin Mu's black clothes made a hunting sound. He stretched out his right hand, spread his fingers, and grabbed and swung the flaming giant sword that was coming towards him. Suddenly, countless golden lights flashed, turning into a brilliant rain of light. This golden light was brilliant and endless, spreading in all directions like an overwhelming force. Just like that, the flaming giant sword was broken into pieces, turned into a sheet of flames, scattered and disappeared. At the same time, an indescribable and powerful pressure suddenly erupted, and the entire air seemed to be trembling. Ling Yao groaned and took 2 steps back, her chest slightly lowered and her beautiful eyes widened. Her attack was so powerful that even a strong person of the same level would have difficulty resisting it. Unexpectedly, it was broken so easily by this young man. Sure enough, his strength is very strong. I am afraid that he has surpassed the Daozhan realm and reached a higher level. A glimmer of light flashed in Ling Yao's eyes, and she had secretly made a decision in her heart. If the opponent is really strong, then she will pretend to be invincible, stop decisively, and then make friends with the opponent. Just thinking about it? Her face regained its composure, she smiled faintly, and looked at Qin Mu. It turns out he is a top master. I'm sorry, I just offended him. She added, we don't know each other anymore. If you don't mind, let's make friends. My name is Ling Yao, and I am the saint of the Piao Holy Palace. What is your name? After Ling Yao finished speaking, she stared at Qin Mu with bright eyes. Qin Mu. He felt he had met his match. I have to admit that this woman in front of me is really powerful. Although he already knew that the other party might be the saint of Misty Palace, he still underestimated the other party's face. It is indeed a Misty Palace, indeed a crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Seeing that Qin Mu didn't speak, Ling Yao thought he acquiesced, so she smiled and said, if you don't speak, just treat it as your consent. I like to make friends the most, and we will be friends from now on. As she spoke, she stretched out her slender, jade-like hand towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu. Seeing Ling Yao's arm stretched out to him, the veins on his forehead couldn't help but jump a few times. Even Lin Xiaoxiao finally realized that the senior sister was trying to steal a man from her. Fortunately, she thought her senior sister was having a seizure just now. She actually attacked such a handsome man. It turned out that she was playing hard to get. Senior sister is so scheming. Lin Xiaoxiao muttered in her heart, and ran over quickly, standing between Qin Mu and Ling Yao as if declaring sovereignty. Ahem, senior sister, this is the person I took a fancy to first. Ling Yao's face changed. Xiaoxiao, what are you talking about? What do you mean by the person you fall in love with first? You are still young and ignorant, so don't talk nonsense. Lin Xiaoxiao snorted, you can deceive outsiders, but you can't hide it from me. You just want to seduce the senior brother, but if you can't, don't even think about it. Ling Yao. Qin Mu. Are the women in this Misty Palace abnormal? Qin Mu feels that his head hurts a little now, this inexplicable taste has become delicious. It's all because he's so handsome that he can't be a villain even if he wants to be, ugh. Xiaoxiao, stop messing around and come back quickly, Ling Yao scolded. She was not angry. After all, Lin Xiaoxiao was the granddaughter of the great elder, so even if Lin Xiaoxiao was disrespectful to her, she was not angry. Senior sister, you should give up. Senior brother is not an ordinary person and cannot be controlled by you, Lin Xiaoxiao continued with a firm tone. Ling Yao also had a headache seeing her being so persistent. Lin Xiaoxiao looked at the stalemate between the two and suddenly turned around with a toothy smile. Brother, don't worry, senior sister is not a bad person. This is her character. I promise not to hurt you. Then he pulled Qin Mu aside. Let's go, junior sister will show you around our Piao palace. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and followed Lin Xiaoxiao away from the beach. In fact, he had long wanted to go to that floating island in the sky, but this floating island was equipped with a special barrier. Of course, the power of this barrier was not worth mentioning to Qin Mu. However, according to Qin Mu's observation, this barrier is closely connected to the soul fire of a certain person on the floating island. It is very mysterious. Even if he uses the power of the great emperor's cultivation, he can only invade by force, but cannot enter quietly. Qin Mu didn't want to expose his trump card and whereabouts at this time, so he chose to wait outside. Unexpectedly, 2 female fools arrived. And a fool wants to take him into the floating island. Isn't this just what he wants? The corner of Qin Mu's mouth raised a slight arc, and Lin Xiaoxiao casually pulled him to the floating island. Seeing Lin Xiaoxiao pulling Qin Mu away, Ling Yao sighed and had no choice but to follow. The entire floating island is built like a fairy cave. Spiritual mountains, spiritual springs, spiritual birds. Various scenery, exotic flowers and plants, elixirs and spiritual materials, and even a classical and gorgeous crystal palace, floating in mid-air, exuding a dense brilliance. Qin Mu also saw some people in various costumes lining up outside the mountain gate, not knowing what they were doing. Just at this time, Lin Xiaoxiao took his arm and explained, "Senior brother, our Piao Palace has a tradition. Every 23 years, our Piao Palace will hold a selection competition to select the best disciples to enter the mountain gate. To become the core disciple of our Piao Palace, this time the trials are about to begin, so many people are rushing to sign up." After hearing Lin Xiaoxiao's explanation, Qin Mu thought thoughtfully. It turns out that there is such a rule in Piao Palace. No wonder these people dress so special. It turns out that it is for this reason. Oh, the selection competition? How was it compared? Qin Mu asked. The trial is very simple. The first is to test the level of martial arts training and combat effectiveness, the second is the physical test, and then the comprehensive evaluation, Lin Xiaoxiao explained while flying to the mountain gate with Qin Mu. But senior brother, you are so powerful, where did you come from? Lin Xiaoxiao was chattering along the way, seemingly never stopping. Qin Mu said, I am just a casual cultivator. I have no family, no sect, and no one to rely on. Lin Xiaoxiao rolled her eyes, wow, senior brother, you are so awesome. I want to learn swordsmanship. Please teach me swordsmanship. No matter what conditions you ask for, I will agree to it. Qin Mu smiled, you're welcome. Lin Xiaoxiao shook his head, I'm sincere, senior brother, I know you must be a hidden master, right? Just teach me swordsmanship. Qin Mu smiled and said, I am really an ordinary person. Lin Xiaoxiao said, if you don't believe it, I guess you must be a super swordsman. Qin Mu laughed, I really am not, forget it if you don't believe me. You really don't want to help me, Lin Xiaoxiao pouted, with a look of grievance on her face. Qin Mu blinked, in that case, let's find a place where there is no one, and I will teach you well. Great, Lin Xiaoxiao cheered, thank you, senior brother, let's go to my room. As she spoke, she took Qin Mu's hand and walked forward, heading straight to the courtyard where she lived. Qin Mu let her hold his wrist, the corners of his lips curved slightly, and a strange light shone in his eyes. Seeing this, Ling Yao hurriedly followed behind the two of them, and screamed inwardly, how could she forget this? Although Lin Xiaoxiao was usually a bit stupid, her mind was very clear at critical moments, so she was asked to do it again this time. Got a head start. No, she must stop Lin Xiaoxiao from leading the man to her residence later. Just as Ling Yao stepped forward, Lin Xiaoxiao suddenly stopped. Hey, senior sister Ling Yao, why are you following me? You also want to learn swordsmanship? Lin Xiaoxiao tilted her head and looked at Ling Yao. Ling Yao choked immediately. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 462. I. Ling Yao gritted her teeth. She couldn't tell Lin Xiaoxiao that she was afraid that she would snatch the man away first. I also want to learn swordsmanship. Ling Yao gritted her teeth and made up an excuse. Lin Xiaoxiao blinked a few times, well, since senior brother promised to teach me, senior sister Lin Jiao can follow if she wants to learn. Ling Yao breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly followed. Lin Xiaoxiao led Qin Mu to her courtyard, opened the door, and welcomed him in excitedly, Senior brother, please sit down. Qin Mu looked around the room. The room was extremely spacious, with luxurious furnishings, and several simple and elegant calligraphy and paintings hung on the walls. The frames of these calligraphy and paintings were all carved from spiritual stones, and the spiritual energy contained in them was extremely rich. At first glance, they were the best of the best. In addition to these calligraphy and paintings, there were many jades and treasures piled up in the house, showing that the owner lived an extremely wealthy life. Lin Xiaoxiao diligently made tea and served fruits to Qin Mu, and also brought out some snacks to entertain him. Qin Mu sat at the table, slowly eating snacks and drinking tea, which was quite comfortable. Lin Xiaoxiao accompanied him without saying a word, her bright big eyes rolling around, staring at Qin Mu, and no one knew what she was thinking. Qin Mu put down the teacup, finally raised his head, squinted his eyes and looked at her, and smiled. "Why are you staring at me?" He Lin Xiaoxiao pursed her lips and smiled. "I think senior brother is very handsome, I have never seen anyone more handsome than senior brother since I grew up." Qin Mu stroked his forehead. "I am just an ordinary person." Lin Xiaoxiao said seriously, "No, you are definitely not an ordinary person, senior brother, please tell me your origins." "My origins?" Qin Mu pondered, suddenly grinned, and said, "I don't have any origins." Lin Xiaoxiao opened her eyes wide. "How is it possible? I can feel that there is a suffocating sense of oppression on senior brother, and he can't be an ordinary person." Qin Mu laughed and said, "Really? Then maybe you feel it wrong." After speaking, he stretched and stood up. Lin Xiaoxiao hurriedly said, "Brother, just tell me, which family you are from, your strength is so unfathomable, I believe the power behind you must be extraordinary." Qin Mu touched his chin. "Do you really want to know the power behind me?" Lin Xiaoxiao nodded vigorously, her eyes full of expectation, almost drooling. Ling Yao on the side also pricked up her ears to listen. She was also very curious about this. The strength that the other party just showed shocked him. Qin Mu sighed. "Well, then I'll tell you." Lin Xiaoxiao quickly came closer and pretended to listen. Qin Mu whispered, "Actually, I'm from Tianlan territory." Tianlan territory. Lin Xiaoxiao was stunned. The southernmost Tianlan territory. Ling Yao also widened her eyes, extremely surprised. "You are actually from Tianlan territory? Is it that remote and desolate place in Tianlan territory?" Qin Mu said lightly, "Yes." Lin Xiaoxiao was also stunned, muttering to himself, "Tianlan territory, the people there are very weak, how come you are so powerful, senior brother? Moreover, Tianlan territory is very far away from here, how come you came here?" Ling Yao nodded in agreement. This young man, obviously came here for her, but he was still pretending here, deceiving herself that he came here from a remote area. Such a lie, she saw through it at a glance. In her heart, she sneered secretly. However, on the surface, she did not expose it. Qin Mu sighed, and seemed not ready to continue hiding it from Lin Xiaoxiao, saying, "This is a long story. I am indeed from Tianlan territory, and I am a prince of the royal family. As a result, a foolish and tyrannical monarch appeared in Tianlan territory, making the entire Tianlan territory miserable. The people were miserable. In order to save the people, my father decided to lead the army to attack the monarch and the country ruled by the monarch. As a result," he paused, "in the end, it failed. I escaped and was unfortunately hunted down, so I fled all the way to this place." Lin Xiaoxiao opened her mouth wide and looked at Qin Mu blankly. "Tianlan territory has become so chaotic? Even you, who are so powerful, failed?" Qin Mu nodded. "Yes, the monarch is very powerful, we are not his opponent." Lin Xiaoxiao clenched her fists and couldn't help cursing, "Damn the monarch! Why is he the emperor?" Ling Yao also snorted coldly, "The monarch is unjust and brings disaster to the country and the people." The two were filled with righteous indignation. Yet Qin Mu nodded in agreement. This time when I return to Tianlan domain, I will eliminate that damn tyrant, eliminate harm for the people, and revitalize our Tianlan domain. Lin Xiaoxiao said with both emotion and worry, but, you are a prince of the royal family, you must be careful when you go back. Although the tyrant is incompetent, his methods must be extremely cruel and ruthless. If you go back alone, will it be dangerous? Qin Mu laughed, don't worry, a mere tyrant is nothing. I will definitely be able to eliminate him after I go back. Brother, do you want me to help you? I am willing to help you. Lin Xiaoxiao clenched her fist and said seriously. Ling Yao opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but finally swallowed it back. Because the young man in front of him is strong, but the imperial power behind him has been destroyed, so there will not be much help for him to seize the position of palace master in the future. To be honest, she didn't want to waste too much energy and time on this. After all, there was really not much time left for her. She is different from Lin Xiaoxiao. Lin Xiaoxiao has a great elder as her backer and has no idea what cruelty is. Especially the competition for the position of palace master, with several saints and saints having backers, has almost reached a fever pitch, and an astonishing war will break out at any time. Of course, this so-called war is not an open battle, but a private contest, but who loses and wins has far-reaching consequences. Therefore, each of the saints is very careful. They are wary of each other and have many secret battles. Their skills and strategies are no longer hidden. Once it breaks out, it will probably cause an uproar. Whoever wins this drama will become the palace master. Although Ling Yao no longer has any hope, now that she has the chance, she also wants to give it a try. If she can succeed, she will become the supreme power in the Piamiao realm in the future. This temptation was too fatal for her. Lin Xiaoxiao, there is no way to compare with her. That's why Ling Yao tried every means to win over Qin Mu, but she didn't expect Qin Mu to say that the forces behind him had been annihilated. However, the young man in front of him is indeed very powerful, and he might be able to help you in the future. Ling Yao thought about it and said, yes, that's right, we can all help you. Qin Mu wiped the dry corners of his eyes and said movedly, I'm so touched. You are worthy of being my chosen one. I love you so much. After finishing speaking, his eyes fell on Ling Yao's face. Ling Yao secretly laughed again, and she guessed it right. This young man came here just for him. What are you going to do? Although she had long expected that the young man approaching her must have a purpose, when she saw Qin Mu's gaze, Ling Yao still felt guilty and subconsciously took a step back. Qin Mu looked at her with a half smile. Suddenly, he stretched out his finger and flicked Ling Yao, come here. Ling Yao hesitated, then subconsciously took 2 steps back, frowning slightly. She was a little dissatisfied with this commanding tone. What do you want to do? Qin Mu smiled slightly, don't be nervous, I just have something that I really need your help with. What's the matter? Ling Yao asked with a frown. What she just said was completely polite. Why did the other party take it seriously? Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, stood up suddenly, and slowly pushed towards Ling Yao. What do you want to do? Seeing this young man approaching step by step, Ling Yao suddenly felt the hairs on her body standing on end for some reason, and instinctively wanted to escape. But as soon as he took his foot forward, he found that he was imprisoned by an invisible force and could not move. Qin Mu pushed towards Ling Yao step by step. The scene in front of her was so weird that Ling Yao couldn't help but scream and struggled desperately to escape, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move at all. Qin Mu got closer and closer, with a gentle smile on his face, looking at Ling Yao as if he were looking at his prey. Seeing Qin Mu getting closer and closer to her, Ling Yao's pupils gradually shrank, her heart beat violently, and she almost collapsed. Don't be afraid. Qin Mu's hand gently pressed on her shoulder. Ling Yao suddenly felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She froze on the spot, without any resistance at all. Relax, don't resist, I won't kill you. Qin Mu smiled slightly, his voice full of confusion. Ling Yao was stunned. At this moment, her mind went blank, except for Qin Mu's gentle voice. After a while, Ling Yao's body gradually became soft, her eyes lost focus, and she was completely lost. So good, Qin Mu whispered, stretched out his other hand, pulled Ling Yao into his arms, hugged her gently, and then picked her up. What do you want to do? Ling Yao was ashamed, angry, frightened and panicked, struggling desperately. Qin Mu hugged her up and said with a smile, I'm not doing anything, I just want to take you to rest. I have no ill intentions towards you. Ling Yao's face turned red and she wanted to curse, but she couldn't even utter half a sentence. She was only embarrassed and frightened. Don't worry, you are the saint I chose. I will not hurt you. Qin Mu chuckled and patted her shoulder gently. Put me down, well. Ling Yao struggled desperately, trying to get Qin Mu to let go of her, but she heard a strange sound coming from her ears. The sound seemed to have magic power that made her stop struggling. In fact, her body slowly heated up, and a certain desire rose in her heart. What kind of weird power, how could it be like this, could it be that I was poisoned? This thought flashed through Ling Yao's mind, but unfortunately, she couldn't even react at all. She only felt that her body was limp, like a puddle of water, and she had completely lost her strength. She used all her strength to tilt her head to one side and looked in the direction of Lin Xiaoxiao, hoping that she could find clues and save herself from danger. However, what was waiting for her was a silly face. Lin Xiaoxiao seemed to be frozen, her eyes staring straight at the ceiling, her expression dull, her mouth opening and closing, mumbling. Can't hear exactly what she said. Ling Yao was desperate. She knew it was over, she was being controlled. What's your name? Qin Mu looked at her and asked with a toothy smile. Ling Yao gritted her teeth and stared at him without saying a word. Forget it, it's not important anymore. Qin Mu shook his head, suddenly stretched out his hand, pinched her chin, and lifted it up, forcing her to face him. Ling Yao watched helplessly as he moved to her lips and closed her mouth suddenly. But Qin Mu's power was stronger than hers, and she couldn't resist at all. She struggled. Qin Mu smiled and shook his head. He reached out with his right palm, and with 5 claws like hooks, he suddenly grabbed Ling Yao's clothes and pulled gently. With a tearing sound, Ling Yao's clothes instantly tore apart, revealing the snow-white skin on her chest. At the same time, a pink pattern was exposed in the brightly lit room. Ling Yao was stunned and looked at the pink pattern on her chest in disbelief. What is this? Why does she have such a mark? This mark looks like a soaring butterfly, but if you look closely, it looks evil and tempting, as if it has some kind of magic power, making people involuntarily intoxicated. What is this? Why is there this pattern on my chest? What on earth is going on? Ling Yao stared blankly at the mark on her chest, her whole brain in confusion. Qin Mu looked at the pink pattern on Ling Yao's chest with great interest, and then exclaimed, "What a perfect work of art!" Qin Mu looked at her with a smile, "I designed this pattern specially for you." Ling Yao stared at him blankly, her head buzzing, and she had no idea what he was talking about. Although she didn't understand, it didn't stop her from feeling resentful at all. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything but gasp at this moment, and her eyes quickly turned red. At this time, Lin Xiaoxiao's expression finally recovered, but she still seemed not to have seen Ling Yao. She mustered up her courage, looked at Qin Mu and said, "Senior brother, if you need help, just ask. I can't help with anything else, but as long as I'm here, I will definitely protect you and return to Tianlan territory safely." Lin Xiaoxiao stared at Qin Mu with her beautiful eyes, full of expectation. Qin Mu suddenly laughed, raised his head, looked at her, and said slowly, "Really?" Lin Xiaoxiao nodded vigorously and said firmly, "It's more real than pearls." "Okay, then, I'll lend you my body." Qin Mu suddenly smiled. Lin Xiaoxiao was stunned at first, then her pretty face turned red instantly, and she said coquettishly, "What are you going to use my body for?" Qin Mu smiled mysteriously, stretched out his hand and gently pressed her chest. Lin Xiaoxiao's delicate body trembled slightly, her pretty face suddenly turned red to her ears. The courage she had just mustered up disappeared in an instant, and she stepped away in panic. "Brother, what do you want to do?" "No, don't mess around." Qin Mu smiled slightly, suddenly grabbed her shoulders, and pushed her hard. Lin Xiaoxiao was caught off guard and fell onto the stone bed, right in Qin Mu's arms. Qin Mu took advantage of the situation and bullied him, and said calmly, "Since you said you would protect me, you should fulfill your promise." Lin Xiaoxiao's face turned the color of pig liver, and her heart was beating wildly. She never expected that Qin Mu would actually make such a ridiculous suggestion, and she said anxiously, "No, no, we have only known each other for a long time. We are not very familiar yet. Besides, it is not appropriate for the two of us to be alone. Senior brother, please respect yourself and don't act recklessly." The more Lin Xiaoxiao spoke, the softer his voice became. In the end, almost only he could hear it. She is also a girl. Although she is not very old, after all, in her 20 years, she is full of fantasies about things between men and women and full of longing for the future. How could she have ever thought of such a thing? Now I suddenly met Qin Mu. I originally thought I could protect Qin Mu, but I didn't expect that it turned into sending a sheep into the tiger's mouth. I was immediately frightened. "It's okay, you'll be familiar with it in a while." Qin Mu smiled faintly and leaned close to Lin Xiaoxiao's face. A stream of warm breath sprayed onto Lin Xiaoxiao's pretty face, making her shiver. In desperation, she finally seemed to remember that her senior sister Ling Yao was beside her. So she quickly turned around and asked for help. "Sister, please come and help me." Before she could finish her sentence, she froze. "Senior sister, when did you take off all your clothes? And what kind of look do you have?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 463. Ling Yao's clothes had been torn to pieces, and now, only a thin shirt was left. At this moment, senior sister Ling Yao was lying on the stone bed, with a layer of gauze looming, outlining the most sexy and charming curves of her graceful and exquisite figure. Two slender and straight jade legs were exposed naked in the air, and the lines were extremely symmetrical and moving. A delicate little face was filled with shyness and fear. Lin Xiaoxiao was stunned, with a pair of beautiful eyes wide open and her mouth opened wide, as if she had forgotten to breathe. Her eyes fell in front of Ling Yao, and she saw a very gorgeous pink mark in front of senior sister. The mark was translucent, as vivid as coagulated blood, as if it had magic, making people unable to help but fall into it and unable to stop. And on Ling Yao's fair little face, two bright red spots appeared, like peach blossoms in full bloom, charming and enchanting. Lin Xiaoxiao widened her eyes and murmured in disbelief, "Senior sister, what are you doing?" At this moment, Ling Yao, who was lying on the bed, was already ashamed to death, and wished she could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. She even forgot to be afraid, and was left with violent trembling, praying in her heart that this was a dream. But unfortunately, this was not a dream. Because she clearly felt the hot breath coming from Qin Mu, and she also felt a strange numbness on her body. The numbness spread from her skin to her limbs, making her whole body seem to turn into water, and she just wanted to sink into the softness and comfort. This feeling made her feel desperate and ashamed. She had never been so embarrassed before. Ling Yao lay on the stone bed, her eyes fixed on Lin Xiaoxiao and Qin Mu. Her heart was dead. She saw with her own eyes the whole process of Lin Xiaoxiao's eyes losing consciousness and regaining consciousness. What happened was clearer than if she had experienced it herself. The opponent's terrifying strength and strange means were beyond common sense and beyond her cognition. She had no power to resist at all. She didn't even have the chance to scream for help. Ling Yao didn't even dare to guess who the opponent was, let alone what he was going to do next. At this time, Lin Xiaoxiao finally came back to her senses. She glared at Ling Yao and scolded, "Senior sister, you are too impatient. Are you seducing me? Humph, so shameless." Ling Yao. She felt wronged. She was obviously controlled by someone, and it was not her initiative at all. "Senior sister, although I admire your courage, you also used the wrong method. How could a proud man like my senior brother be easily seduced by you? You are wasting your efforts. I used to regard you as an idol. You really disappoint me." Lin Xiaoxiao chattered about Ling Yao. Ling Yao. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't make a sound. She couldn't even raise her head to look at Lin Xiaoxiao. Only her beautiful eyes were still staring at Qin Mu. She hoped that Qin Mu would choose Lin Xiaoxiao and give up her. How could Qin Mu give up her? His eyes admired Ling Yao's beauty without any scruples. At this moment, Ling Yao's skin on her snow-white neck was glowing with a healthy and moist pink color, making that delicate and soft piece even more plump and attractive. As she panted slightly, she exuded endless charm. Especially Ling Yao's buttocks, slightly raised, with an extremely beautiful shape and full of temptation. In addition, Lin Xiaoxiao was standing next to her and chattering non-stop, which made the picture look even more ambiguous. Qin Mu's Adam's apple rolled slightly. He was no longer interested in Lin Xiaoxiao. He walked around Lin Xiaoxiao, walked to the stone bed, bowed his head, approached Ling Yao's cherry lips, and kissed her fiercely. Ling Yao's beautiful eyes suddenly widened. She didn't expect Qin Mu to kiss her suddenly. Her mind became completely blank, and she didn't know what to do at all. Just let Qin Mu invade her beauty wantonly. Lin Xiaoxiao was still scolding Ling Yao, but when she saw this scene, she was stunned. "Master, senior brother, you. Lin Xiaoxiao stuttered. "Senior sister, you. Her voice trembled, and she was a little at a loss. Although Lin Xiaoxiao was arrogant and domineering on weekdays, she was not experienced after all. It was the first time she saw such a shocking scene. She felt that her three views were refreshed in an instant, which was extremely shocking. What should I do? What should I do? Ling Yao was also at a loss in her heart. Pa! With a crisp sound, Qin Mu's slap fell on Ling Yao's buttocks, crisp and pleasant. Lin Xiaoxiao shuddered, woke up, and quickly turned her head away. However, her cheeks became even hotter, burning hot, as if they were about to burn. A wave of sadness surged in Ling Yao's heart, and she really wanted to cry. Her first kiss. Her innocence. How could it be gone just like that? She would rather not have the position of palace master than have this happen to her. But she couldn't break free. Lin Xiaoxiao saw that Ling Yao's expression was becoming more and more painful and frightened. She raised her head in horror and looked at Qin Mu standing in front of her. At this time, she could finally see that her senior sister was not willing, but must have been forced. Just at this time, whether Qin Mu did it intentionally or unintentionally, Ling Yao caught an opportunity and said vaguely, "Junior sister, hurry up, he is a bad guy." Although her voice was weak, Lin Xiaoxiao heard it clearly, and her pretty face turned pale. At this time, how could she not understand what happened, and her heart was simply full of huge waves. "So you, You are bullying my senior sister. Lin Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth, extremely angry, rushed over and punched. Ling Yao saw Lin Xiaoxiao rushing over, and immediately became energetic. While trying to get rid of the control, she hurriedly shouted, "Junior sister." Lin Xiaoxiao's strength is not weak, although it is far inferior to Ling Yao, but this punch is very powerful, and a faint fist light can be seen. Ling Yao was overjoyed. If this punch can knock Qin Mu back or hurt him, then wouldn't her own crisis be eliminated? Lin Xiaoxiao's punch hit Qin Mu. However, Qin Mu did not move at all, but Lin Xiaoxiao herself was bounced away by an invisible strong wind and fell to the ground. With a heavy bang, she fell and was stunned, and couldn't get up for a long time. The little power she had hit Qin Mu was not even a tickle. Ling Yao was dumbfounded. Qin Mu looked down at Lin Xiaoxiao with a sneer, and said lightly, "You'd better be quiet." The coldness in his words frightened Lin Xiaoxiao so much that she trembled all over. She covered her little butt that was almost broken into 8 pieces, and dared not say anything more. Qin Mu reached out and grabbed Ling Yao's ankle, and with the other hand, he hugged Ling Yao's slender waist and held her in his arms. Ling Yao struggled desperately, but Qin Mu waved his hand and pressed her body down, making her unable to move anymore, and she could only be forced to lean on Qin Mu's arms. "Don't be nervous, I just want to communicate with you about life and ideals." Qin Mu's face was still very gentle, and his voice was full of magnetism. But in Ling Yao's ears, it was like the devil's low moan. She felt Qin Mu's hot breath sprayed on her face, smelled the man's smell from her nose, and the whole person fell into a kind of confusion, at a loss. This feeling is very strange, like the invasion of the inner demon. In the past, when she encountered similar situations, her first thought was to find her master, but now, a trace of desire inexplicably rose in her heart. Her heart was clamoring for her to sink into this embrace. She shook her head helplessly, tears overflowing from the corners of her eyes, and murmured, "No, I can't betray my master, I can't." She desperately pushed Qin Mu's chest away. Qin Mu snorted lightly, pinched Ling Yao's chin with one hand, and made her look up, and her eyes met his. "Don't you want to be the master of Piao Holy Palace? I can fulfill your wish." Qin Mu's tone was very gentle, as if the spring breeze was blowing on the willows, making Ling Yao numb all over, and the whole person was stunned. This sentence can be said to have touched her soft spot, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "As long as you are obedient, I will give you the position of the master of the palace." There was a hint of teasing in the depths of Qin Mu's eyes. Ling Yao was stunned, and she had forgotten to resist. "Why should I believe you?" she murmured. Qin Mu laughed twice, "Because, you have no choice." Ling Yao's heart was beating violently. She wanted to refute, but she couldn't speak. She really had no choice, because in her current state, she couldn't escape at all. "Okay, I promise you." Ling Yao finally gave in. Qin Mu smiled, "Very good, you will be proud of your decision today." When Ling Yao said the word promise, it meant that her psychological defense line had completely collapsed. That is to say, at this moment, the Demon Clan mark has achieved 100% effect. This is also a small shortcoming of the Demon Clan mark. When the other party's Tao heart is very firm, the Demon Clan mark cannot achieve 100% effect. When Qin Mu's strength was not so strong, it can be said that it took a lot of effort to plant the Demon Clan mark on Zhang Luoshan. Ling Yao's Tao heart may not be as firm as Zhang Luoshan, but she is also a saint of a large holy land after all. In this aspect, her Tao heart is definitely different from ordinary cultivators, and even far ahead. Qin Mu will soon leave Piao Palace, so he will not allow any accidents to happen, and he must achieve 100% effect. That's why he went to great lengths to make such a thing happen, so that Ling Yao's Dao heart is completely broken. So far, the effect is still very good. For someone like Qin Mu, The mark of the demon clan may not be a disadvantage, but an advantage. Qin Mu gently stroked Ling Yao's back, with a playful arc at the corner of his lips. As long as you are obedient, not only Piao Miao Palace, but the entire Piao Miao domain can be yours. Qin Mu was painting big cakes crazily, and his eyes were also bewitching, which made Ling Yao's heart flutter, and she gradually closed her eyes and let Qin Mu do it. Lin Xiaoxiao looked at the scene and could hardly believe her eyes. She had never thought that senior sister Ling Yao, who had always been extremely proud, would look so shy and charming. And at this time, Qin Mu suddenly let go of his hand, and Ling Yao fell out of his arms and collapsed on the ground as if exhausted. Qin Mu turned around and looked at Lin Xiaoxiao. Lin Xiaoxiao felt chills all over when he saw him, and subconsciously moved back. "What do you want to do?" Lin Xiaoxiao asked, stammering, while trying to control her body to move back. Qin Mu smiled, "Don't be nervous, I have no interest in you." Lin Xiaoxiao. These words meant to let her go, but Lin Xiaoxiao was not happy at all. She even wanted Qin Mu to take back these words. Qin Mu walked over slowly, stared at Lin Xiaoxiao's delicate and pretty face, and said, "But since you saw such a scene, I won't leave you alone." When Lin Xiaoxiao heard these words, her body trembled violently, and her eyes flashed with fear. "No. Calm down, I'm still useful." Before he finished speaking, Lin Xiaoxiao turned around and ran away. She knew clearly that she was no match for Qin Mu. However, before she could even take 2 steps, she suddenly tripped and fell to the ground with a plop. "Ouch!" Lin Xiaoxiao let out a scream. Her right leg was tied up by a chain, causing her to trip and fall to the ground. Lin Xiaoxiao struggled desperately, but to no avail. She turned back and happened to see Qin Mu standing there with his hands behind his back, an indifferent expression, and a half-smile. Although his face was calm, Lin Xiaoxiao still felt cold to the bone. She was so frightened that she screamed, "Grandpa, help me!" Qin Mu didn't bother to talk nonsense to her. He stretched out his hand and lifted Lin Xiaoxiao up. "Brother, please let me go. I was wrong. I will never dare to do it again. Let me go. Let me go quickly dash." Lin Xiaoxiao struggled and screamed desperately, and Qin Mu put a palm on her shoulder. Lin Xiaoxiao's body suddenly stiffened, and she was horrified to find that she couldn't move no matter what. Immediately afterwards, an invisible pressure enveloped her body. Lin Xiaoxiao screamed in panic. She wanted to shout for help, but she couldn't open her mouth at all. Lin Xiaoxiao shook her head desperately, trying to get rid of the pressure, but it was completely useless. Her body seemed to have become a puppet, stiff and unable to move at all. Lin Xiaoxiao watched helplessly as Qin Mu stretched out his left hand, grabbed the skirt of her clothes, and tore it to pieces. She struggled frantically, but there was nothing she could do. After Lin Xiaoxiao's clothes were torn, Qin Mu picked up Lin Xiaoxiao, and then placed her beside Ling Yao. The two of them lay side by side on the stone bed, one on the left and one on the right, close to each other, almost touching. Together. Whoa! Lin Xiaoxiao struggled desperately, twisted desperately, and tried desperately to escape, but her body couldn't move at all and could only let out a whimper. At this time, Ling Yao, who had just come to her senses, also saw the mark appearing on Lin Xiaoxiao's chest. That mark shocked her heart because it was exactly the same as hers. Moreover, what was even more strange was that when her eyes noticed this strange mark, she found that her soul began to fluctuate, as if she had been summoned. "What the hell is this?" While Ling Yao was thinking, Qin Mu slowly took out a piece of black cloth and covered her eyes, blocking her sight. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 464. Ling Yao was startled and subconsciously said, "What are you doing?" "Shh. Qin Mu stretched out a finger and pressed it against her rosy lips. Ling Yao was stunned. "Don't talk, dear." Qin Mu said softly, his voice was low and sexy, full of temptation, which made Ling Yao's heart beat faster. Her breathing was slightly rapid, and she felt her ears rumbling. She seemed to fall into the hot spring pool, and she seemed to be in the clouds, her whole body was soft and without any strength. This was the second time that Ling Yao heard temptation in Qin Mu's tone. A familiar and strange feeling arose spontaneously. She knew Qin Mu did it on purpose. However, this posture was really too ambiguous. Although Ling Yao tried her best to restrain her inner throbbing, her breathing was still out of rhythm. Qin Mu stretched out his arms to wrap around her slender waist and took her into his arms. Ling Yao trembled all over and wanted to resist. Qin Mu rested his chin on her white jade neck and chuckled, "What? Are you shy? Don't worry, not every man is as gentlemanly as me." His voice was magnetic and hoarse, with an inexplicable temptation. Ling Yao felt numb and unbearable, and her heart beat more and more violently. Qin Mu chuckled, leaned forward, and sucked Ling Yao's earlobe. Ling Yao's whole body froze. "Ah, don't." Qin Mu stopped and said with a smile, "You really like this tune." Ling Yao's body became more and more tense. She felt that her blood was boiling and her whole body was shaking involuntarily. This feeling is very strange, but fascinating. She never thought that she would have such a day. "Okay, enough fun, it's time to get down to business." Qin Mu's voice reached Ling Yao's ears, and then Ling Yao felt the skin on her neck itchy, as if there were ants crawling over it. After saying this, Qin Mu let Ling Yao go, and then took off the black cloth covering Ling Yao's eyes, revealing Ling Yao's eyes. At this moment, the expression in Ling Yao's eyes had already been rippling like spring, and the corners of her eyes and eyebrows were full of charm and charm. Ling Yao panted for a while before gradually recovering. Her cheeks were still hot and charming. She raised her head and looked at Qin Mu, looking at Qin Mu with a hint of resentment. Qin Mu chuckled and sat back in his chair. "Actually, I hate forcing others." Ling Yao was startled. Qin Mu continued, "But if that person is willing to help me, I don't mind giving her some benefits." Ling Yao bit her lip, but still mustered up the courage to ask, "What do you want me to do for you?" Qin Mu stared at Ling Yao's eyes and said seriously, "You are the saint of Piamiao Holy Palace. You are more familiar with Piamiao Holy Palace than anyone else, so you just need to tell me everything that happens here. It's very simple." "Tell you everything?" Ling Yao asked back. Qin Mu nodded. Ling Yao hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded, "Okay." "Qin Mu, you should change your name." Ling Yao blushed slightly, hesitated for a moment, and then uttered two words, "Master." Qin Mu stood up, stretched out his hand, stroked Ling Yao's hair, and said, as expected of the Piamiao saint, "You are extremely smart and understand everything at once." Ling Yao's pretty face was slightly red, but she didn't say much, walked slowly to Qin Mu and knelt down. "Master, can you let my junior sister go?" Ling Yao said respectfully, although she knelt down, but her posture was still graceful. Even kneeling, she showed an elegant and beautiful demeanor. Although Lin Xiaoxiao was a little arrogant, she was just spoiled, and her heart was not bad. After all, she was her junior sister, and she didn't want to see her die like this. Qin Mu smiled lightly with a mysterious smile. Ling Yao chuckled and said, "What do you think?" Ling Yao hesitated for a moment. "I guess you will kill her, right?" Her eyes turned to her junior sister Lin Xiaoxiao, who was no longer struggling at this time. She looked ahead with lifeless eyes, and a small and delicate oval face was hung with a somewhat sad look. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Don't worry, she won't die for the time being." "Thank you, Master." Ling Yao breathed a sigh of relief, then raised her head, stared at Qin Mu, and said word by word, "Master, I want to become stronger." Only by becoming stronger can I better compete for the position of the Lord of Piamiao Palace. She has now accepted the reality. Since she has become a slave, she will grasp all the resources around her and work hard to become a strong person to make everyone look at her with new eyes. Otherwise, wouldn't the humiliation she suffered be in vain? Qin Mu nodded and said, "Of course, not only do you have to become stronger, but your junior sister also needs to become more powerful." Ling Yao was stunned. Qin Mu smiled slightly, his eyes fell on her snow-white shoulders. "Although you are now the saint of Piamiao Holy Palace, you also need helpers to help you. This time, I will give you a big gift." "Big gift?" Ling Yao was stunned. "You will know when you see it." Qin Mu smiled with a mysterious smile. Ling Yao looked at Qin Mu, and suddenly blurted out, "Is it an ancient skill?" Qin Mu shook his head, "No." "What's that?" Qin Mu smiled and said nothing. Ling Yao pursed her lips and lowered her head without asking any more questions. She didn't dare to ask again because she was worried that Qin Mu would be angry. Ling Yao pursed her lips, then, "I want to become my master and ask him to teach me more powerful secret techniques and martial arts." Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, looked at Ling Yao with interest, and said, "Are you sure?" "Of course," Ling Yao affirmed, with firm eyes and no hesitation, "I want to learn more from the master." Qin Mu took a deep look at Ling Yao. This saint of Piamiao Palace's cultivation talent may not be the best, but her character is indeed extraordinary. After knowing that he could not break free from the constraints, he boldly seized the opportunity and made demands, knowing how to assess the situation very well. If it were an ordinary monk, he would have been frightened out of his wits after being tortured, but Ling Yao did not. She chose to seize the opportunity, and even offered to become her teacher. And there is actually a deeper meaning here. Ling Yao knew that with her own cultivation level, it was basically impossible to escape from Qin Mu's control. In this case, it was better to use Qin Mu as a backer and use Qin Mu to improve herself. As long as she had stronger power, then, even if you no longer have freedom in the future, you won't be bullied anymore. This is in line with the way the world works. When you lose something, you often gain something. Oh, that's really smart. Qin Mu secretly praised that a girl like this is indeed worth cultivating. Qin Mu had no doubt that without his appearance, Ling Yao would have done a great job in the future, even surpassing those old guys in the Piamiao Holy Palace. He originally planned to take her in and train her to be his puppet, but now it seems he is a bit reluctant to let her go. Ling Yao's talent is extremely good. If she is properly cultivated, she will become a great talent in the future. Qin Mu began to think about what exercises were suitable for her to practice, but he had no choice. He had so many exercises in his hands now that he didn't know which one was better. Ling Yao looked at Qin Mu's silence and couldn't help but feel her heart skip a beat. She knew that this was a very rare opportunity. If you miss this time, it may be difficult to make such a request again in the future. However, she also knew that her request might be difficult to handle, but now, except for Qin Mu, she could no longer find anyone to rely on. The only one she could rely on seemed to be Qin Mu, and this mysterious master seemed to particularly like him. Playing with people's hearts. Ling Yao twisted her clothes nervously and kept swallowing her saliva. Fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. For a moment, the air was so quiet that it was suffocating, and the only sound of the two people's breathing could be heard. After a while, Qin Mu finally spoke, "Unfortunately, I have no plans to accept a disciple, but..." His eyes fell on the proudly erect mountain peak on Ling Yao's chest, and said, "If you really want to learn, I might as well teach you a set of skills." He paused, "But you have to remember that the set of skills only belongs to you." "Belong to me?" Ling Yao was stunned, then she felt happy, and quickly knelt at Qin Mu's feet and said, "Master, don't worry, I will never leak it." "Well, that's good," Qin Mu said lightly, The set of exercises I gave you is called Yin-Yang Reincarnation Technique. It was acquired by me by chance. If you practice it to the extreme, it can keep you young and immortal. Destroy. Ah! Hearing this, Ling Yao's beautiful eyes widened in surprise. Eternal youth and immortality? How is this possible? Qin Mu saw through her doubts and said, this technique is the secret book of the ancient immortals. If you don't believe it, you can give it a try. Ling Yao bit her red and attractive thin lips. After hesitating for a long time, she decided to give it a try as Qin Mu said. After all, she had no choice now. Master, please give me credit, Ling Yao said respectfully. Qin Mu nodded and gently tapped Ling Yao's smooth and plump forehead with his right index finger. In an instant, Ling Yao trembled all over, and a cool and comfortable feeling poured into her body along Qin Mu's fingertips, flowing along her meridians to all parts of her body, nourishing her muscles and flesh, and instantly restored her sluggish spirit. Come over. Ling Yao only felt that her body was warm, and her whole body seemed to be bathed in the spring breeze, feeling indescribably comfortable. This feeling lasted for a while and then disappeared. She opened her eyes and found that the surrounding scenery had become blurry, as if covered with a layer of mist, making it difficult to see clearly. Huh! Ling Yao touched her cheek in surprise, only to find that she seemed to be a few years younger. Her skin was tender, smooth, white and smooth, like an egg with a shell that could be broken by a blow. And she found that her cultivation level had actually broken through. Do you know which immortal created this technique? Qin Mu's voice came to his ears. Hearing this, Ling Yao came back to her senses and looked around, only to realize that she had stood up unknowingly. She turned her head and looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu's expression was as calm as ever, and there was a faint smile on his handsome face, which made people look at him and make it impossible to guess what he was thinking. Wearing a black robe, her black hair was simply pulled up with a jade crown, her facial features were handsome, and her temperament was noble and elegant. I don't know, she answered honestly. Oh, the founder of this technique is an immortal who survived from ancient times. Not only is he fast in practice, he is also extremely capable of saving lives. Qin Mu said calmly, it is said that he fought a bloody battle with millions of demons in the battlefield of immortals, demons, and monsters, and suffered countless casualties. However, he went into the enemy camp alone, beheaded 100,000 people, seriously injured more than 300,000 people, and retreated calmly, which shows his strong strength. He glanced at Ling Yao and continued, although I don't know whether he is still alive, the yin-yang reincarnation art he created has been passed down. He spoke in a low voice, but every word was like a huge hammer, hitting Ling Yao's heart hard. She stared at Qin Mu in amazement, her mouth slightly open. There are such things in this world. Qin Mu's voice was still ringing, since you are my servant, the skills you will practice in the future will naturally not be bad. As long as you are willing to work hard, it will not be a problem to reach the realm of the emperor. Yes, Ling Yao will definitely live up to the expectations of the master. Ling Yao lowered her eyelids to hide the horror in her eyes. Qin Mu nodded lightly, waved his sleeves, and said, you can try to practice it now. The story he told just now was of course a lie. This so-called yin-yang reincarnation art was just a skill he seized from a saint, and it was more than enough for her to use. Ling Yao heard this and did not dare to neglect it. She hurriedly sat cross-legged on the stone platform according to Qin Mu's instructions and closed her eyes to practice it. In an instant, she felt as if all the pores in her body were opened, greedily absorbing the spiritual power from the outside world, and the whole person was floating. And these spiritual energies were pure and flawless, without any impurities, and exuded vigorous vitality, far better than her own cultivation. After a while, she opened her eyes, and her eyes flashed with excitement. Thank you, Master, for your reward. Ling Yao knelt down deeply in front of Qin Mu excitedly. If Ling Yao's submission to Qin Mu was 100% before, then now it is 10,000%, and it is the kind of submission that is sincerely convinced. Qin Mu chuckled when he heard this. He stood up, walked to the window, stood with his back to Ling Yao, and stood with his hands behind his back. Go, complete your mission. Master's kindness, Ling Yao will never be able to repay it in this life. Ling Yao raised her head, looked at Qin Mu's back seriously, and said firmly, in the future, I will definitely protect you with my life, go through fire and water, and never refuse. Hearing this, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly, turned around slowly, and happened to see Ling Yao's eyes red. Ling Yao seemed to realize that she was too excited, and her pretty face flushed. She quickly looked away, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and whispered, Ling Yao, take your leave. After speaking, she bowed to Qin Mu, turned around and left the room. After Ling Yao left completely, Qin Mu curled his lips and looked at Lin Xiaoxiao, who was absent-minded. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us, we will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 465. Qin Mu flicked his fingers, and a ray of soul power was injected into Lin Xiaoxiao's mind. Lin Xiaoxiao had already been tortured by the demon mark and was in agony. At this moment, as soon as Qin Mu loosened his restraints, Lin Xiaoxiao quickly woke up from her daze. She looked around blankly, and when she looked at Qin Mu again, her face was filled with fear and her body was trembling. You don't have to be afraid, Qin Mu wrote lightly, actually, I'm a really good person. What do you want to do? Lin Xiaoxiao asked with a trembling voice. Qin Mu looked at Lin Xiaoxiao, his eyes were dark, and the corners of his mouth had a strange and unpredictable arc. He walked slowly to Lin Xiaoxiao. Lin Xiaoxiao's pupils shrank suddenly, she couldn't help but took 2 steps back, and said tremblingly, please spare me, let me go, I am willing to pay any price. She knelt on the ground and kept begging. Qin Mu ignored her, but stretched out his right hand, gently touched Lin Xiaoxiao's delicate face, looked at her carefully for a long time, and then said, she was actually pretty good, but it's a pity to die like this. When Lin Xiaoxiao heard this, she was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and her eyes instantly became moist. She bit her lip, looked at Qin Mu with tears in her eyes, and prayed, please, as long as you let me go, you can do whatever you want. She kept sobbing, and her appearance of pear blossoms with rain was endearing, but at this moment, there was only fear and despair in her heart. She has never been so remorseful as she is now. She should not have brought this man in, let alone provoke this devil. She could be said to have felt the horror of the demon mark just now. It was thousands of times more painful than being cut into pieces with 1,000 cuts, and she couldn't help but collapse. Qin Mu glanced at her lightly, spare you? Well, as long as you spare me, I am willing to work as a cow or a horse for you, and I will do anything. Lin Xiaoxiao kowtowed desperately, tears streaming down her face. Don't be like this. In fact, what you just said moved me very much. Qin Mu gently stroked her smooth and white skin and spoke softly. However, I like well-behaved children. Can you be more well-behaved? Lin Xiaoxiao suddenly raised her head, looked at him, nodded desperately, and said, yes, of course I can. In that case, please help me with something first, Qin Mu whispered in Lin Xiaoxiao's ear. After listening to Qin Mu's words, the expression on Lin Xiaoxiao's face suddenly froze, her eyes widened, as if she had seen a ghost. What? Not willing, Qin Mu blinked. Lin Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth and said, Master, don't worry, I will definitely take care of it. Okay, Qin Mu showed a warm smile, then took out a black object that looked like a date core and handed it to Lin Xiaoxiao, saying, Go and complete what you should do. Lin Xiaoxiao lowered his head to take the black date core, his eyes fell on the date core, and his hands couldn't help but tremble. This date core is very strange. There is a faint black mist lingering on the surface. It can be vaguely seen that there seems to be life surging inside, which is very magical. But what shocked Lin Xiaoxiao the most was the aura in the jujube core. It was cold, evil, violent, murderous, all kinds of negative auras gathered in it. Lin Xiaoxiao didn't know what it was, but she also understood that it was definitely not a good thing, and it was even 100 times more dangerous than the demon mark in her body. She hesitated and did not immediately take the black date core into her arms. Huh, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly and said lightly, "What? Don't you want to?" I'm just worried about failure." Lin Xiaoxiao stammered. "Just do as I say, don't worry about failure," Qin Mu said calmly. "Why, do you still feel unwilling to do so?" No, it's just, this thing is too precious, I'm afraid of wasting it," Lin Xiaoxiao explained quickly. Qin Mu smiled lightly, "Don't worry, I just hope you don't disappoint me." Lin Xiaoxiao nodded and carefully took the date core into his arms. Then he forced himself to calm down, took a deep breath, stood up, and said respectfully, "Master, please don't worry, I will do my best to help you." "Okay, you can leave now, I wish you good luck." Qin Mu patted her shoulder and signaled that she could leave. Lin Xiaoxiao hesitated for a moment and finally stood up. Looking at Qin Mu, he seemed to be hesitant to speak. "By the way, my name is Qin Mu." At this time, Qin Mu was lying on the bed and added with his eyes closed. Lin Xiaoxiao was slightly startled, nodded, turned around and left in a hurry. After Lin Xiaoxiao retreated, the room fell into a brief silence. Qin Mu, who had his eyes closed on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes, with a cold light in his dark and deep eyes. Although the process is more troublesome, in this way, the misty holy palace will basically fall into my hands. Qin Mu smiled and said to himself with a playful look, "I really look forward to what the master of the misty holy palace will look like when he comes back." Lin Xiaoxiao walked out of the room and walked straight to the palace at the highest point of the mountain. That is where the elders of the sect hold discussions, and it is also where the spiritual energy of the entire Piamiao Holy Palace is located. Along the way, the disciples she met stopped and saluted her. "Senior Sister Lin," everyone called, respectfully. Lin Xiaoxiao dealt with it perfunctorily, with hurried steps, fine beads of sweat oozing from her forehead, and an expression of panic that could not be concealed. What she was going to do now was a matter of life and death for the Piamiao Palace. Lin Xiaoxiao didn't know what the consequences would be, but it would definitely not be a good ending for the Piamiao Palace. However, Lin Xiaoxiao also knew that even if she didn't do it, Ling Yao would do it. It would be the same ending at that time. Lin Xiaoxiao's mind was in a mess, and her thoughts were surging. She didn't dare to think too much. The closer she got to the top of the Piamiao Palace, the stronger the breath of the natural treasures surrounding her became, almost condensing into mist. Lin Xiaoxiao swallowed her saliva and finally stopped. The door of the palace was open, and there were faint sounds of conversation coming from inside. Hearing the voices inside, Lin Xiaoxiao hesitated for a moment, and finally walked in. "Hey, Xiaoxiao, you're back," a crisp and sweet female voice came. A girl in her 20s quickly came over. Lin Xiaoxiao forced a smile and said, "Well, I had something urgent to do, so I rushed back." "Really?" The girl frowned and stared at Lin Xiaoxiao. "Why do you look so bad? Are you feeling unwell?" she asked with concern. Lin Xiaoxiao shook her head and said, "It's okay, it's just that the breakthrough has backfired a little." "Really okay?" The girl was skeptical. "It's really okay, I'll be fine after a rest," Lin Xiaoxiao smiled. "Okay, if you need anything, just come to me, I will definitely try my best to help you," the girl said seriously. Thank you. Lin Xiaoxiao nodded to the girl again with gratitude. You're welcome. The girl waved her hand, and turned around and left without disturbing Lin Xiaoxiao. Watching her disappear from sight, Lin Xiaoxiao breathed a sigh of relief, and her whole back was soaked with sweat. She didn't dare to hesitate, and pushed open the door and entered the hall. In the center of the hall, a group of elders sat or stood around a stone platform. On top of the stone platform, an old man sat cross-legged with his lips tightly pursed, as if he was practicing. This old man was the Grand Elder of Biamiao Holy Palace, Lin Xiaoxiao's grandfather, Lin Changfeng. He was wearing a silver robe, looking like an immortal, and exuding a faint aura of oppression. After Lin Xiaoxiao walked into the hall, she immediately attracted the attention of these elders and Lin Changfeng, and they all looked up. When they saw Lin Xiaoxiao sweating profusely and looking as pale as paper, everyone changed their faces. Xiaoxiao, what happened? Lin Changfeng shouted in a deep voice, and his figure instantly disappeared from the spot and appeared in front of Lin Xiaoxiao. Lin Xiaoxiao was startled, and quickly shook her head, whispering, I'm fine, it's just that I practiced too eagerly, which caused a little backlash. Oh. Lin Changfeng raised his eyebrows, but did not continue to pursue the matter. He gently touched Lin Xiaoxiao's hair and said gently, take good care of yourself. You have a good talent. As long as you work hard, you are more likely to step into the realm of saints in the future. However, you must not practice too hastily to avoid damaging your foundation. Yes, Grandpa. Lin Xiaoxiao's heart was warm, and she answered obediently. Then she looked at the other elders and Lin Changfeng, and said carefully, Grandpa, I have something to tell you. What is it? Lin Changfeng frowned as he looked at Lin Xiaoxiao's hesitant expression. Yes, it's about that. Lin Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth and finally said, Grandpa, I want to practice seriously tonight. Can you prepare a room with sufficient spiritual energy for me? Since you want to practice seriously, this request will certainly be met. Lin Changfeng smiled and nodded. Lin Xiaoxiao shook her head, Grandpa, I want to practice on the spiritual vein. Practice on the spiritual vein. Lin Changfeng narrowed his eyes suddenly when he heard this, and his eyes fell on Lin Xiaoxiao. At this moment, he seemed to have seen through some of his granddaughter's secrets. Seeing Lin Xiaoxiao's flickering eyes, Lin Changfeng's heart suddenly sank, and he secretly cried out that it was not good, and his face suddenly sank. Xiaoxiao, tell Grandpa why you want to practice on the spiritual vein. Lin Xiaoxiao hesitated for a moment, finally gritted her teeth, and mustered up the courage to say, I don't know why, I just think this spiritual vein is very suitable for me to practice, and I have a hunch that if I practice on the spiritual vein, I will have a huge gain. As soon as these words came out, Lin Changfeng frowned and said nothing. The other elders and disciples in the hall exchanged glances with each other, and saw surprise in each other's eyes. This spiritual vein is the core of Biamiao Holy Palace. Every year, 1/3 of the spiritual energy absorbed is sent to nourish the spiritual spring, and the rest is used to supply the disciples of each peak and courtyard. Lin Changfeng's place of practice is set outside the spiritual vein. Unless there is a special reason, others are not allowed to approach the spiritual vein at will. Xiaoxiao, do you really want to practice in the spiritual vein? You have to think clearly. The spiritual energy on the spiritual vein is too abundant, which is not conducive to your practice, and may even cause you to suffer from the backlash of spiritual energy. Another elder of Biamiao Holy Palace couldn't help but dissuade him. Yes, Xiaoxiao, you should understand the importance of the spiritual vein to our Biamiao Holy Palace. If something happens, no one can afford it. Other elders also spoke up. Lin Xiaoxiao glanced at everyone, and suddenly took a deep breath and said, I have thought it through. I want to practice on the spiritual vein. An elder of Biamiao Holy Palace was about to say something, but was stopped by Lin Changfeng. He looked at Lin Xiaoxiao and sighed slightly, since you insist on doing so, I will arrange someone to take you there. Lin Changfeng doted on his granddaughter very much. He knew that even if he opposed Lin Xiaoxiao's decision, he could not change it. Lin Xiaoxiao was overjoyed and immediately thanked him. "Thank you, Grandpa." "Xiaoxiao, have you really decided to practice on the spiritual vein?" Lin Changfeng stared at his granddaughter. "Yes." Lin Xiaoxiao nodded solemnly, took a deep breath and said, "Grandpa, I don't want to miss the opportunity." Lin Changfeng pondered for a moment, and suddenly smiled slightly. "Xiaoxiao, since you have decided, I support you. Let's go, I will take you to the spiritual vein." At that moment, Lin Changfeng personally called a person and asked him to accompany Lin Xiaoxiao to the spiritual vein. Although Lin Changfeng loves his granddaughter, the spirit vein is equally important. This child is really nonsense. She actually went to the spirit vein to practice. This is simply unreasonable. After Lin Xiaoxiao and the man left, an elder shook his head and sighed. Lin Changfeng closed his eyes slightly, as if thinking about something. "Grand Elder, in my opinion, the girl has never seen the spirit vein. She deliberately made an excuse to go out and play. Don't pay attention to her. Let's finish discussing the matter just now." An elder next to him suggested. "Yes, let's talk about the matter first. When the child has enough fun, he will know how powerful it is." Another elder agreed. "Well, okay, everyone please sit down." Lin Changfeng nodded and motioned everyone to sit down. Everyone sat around and began to talk about the matter of Biao Palace accepting disciples, constantly exchanging information. Lin Changfeng listened quietly and occasionally interrupted. However, his divine consciousness was no longer here, but flew into the yard where Lin Xiaoxiao lived. He wanted to see what happened to his granddaughter, and she suddenly asked to practice on the spiritual vein. This was too abnormal, because he knew Lin Xiaoxiao best, and this girl would never ask to practice on her own initiative. As for Lin Xiaoxiao, the person he sent was a saint, and there would be no problem. On the other side, Lin Xiaoxiao, accompanied by this elder, finally came to the spiritual vein of Biao Holy Palace. Looking at the towering mountain in front, Lin Xiaoxiao was shocked. This mountain is the spiritual vein of Biao Holy Palace. It is said that tens of thousands of years ago, the ancestor of Biao Palace forcibly moved the entire mountain range into the void. The whole mountain turned into a huge island in the void. In order to fill this island with spiritual energy, Biao Holy Palace used a lot of magic weapons and resources to build this spiritual vein as a treasure to guard it. The spiritual energy here is much richer than that of ordinary places, and even richer than that of any spiritual vein in the entire Biao domain. If it were another cultivator who cultivated here, it would probably take only a few years for him to be promoted to a strong man in the Dao-killing realm. The elder arranged by Lin Changfeng led Lin Xiaoxiao to the entrance of the spiritual vein, pointed at the entrance and said, "Lin girl, this is the entrance to the spiritual vein. After entering the spiritual vein, remember not to rush in, and don't touch the restrictions here, otherwise it will trigger the restrictions, which will cause injuries or even death." After saying that, he reminded, "Don't be stubborn, you can choose to quit." Lin Xiaoxiao nodded and walked towards the entrance of the spiritual vein. The elder wanted to follow Lin Xiaoxiao in, but after thinking about it, he stopped and said, "Okay, I'll send you here, remember not to force it." "Thank you for the reminder, elder, don't worry, I know my limits." Lin Xiaoxiao turned around, waved her hand, and resolutely raised her foot and stepped into the entrance of the spiritual vein. The elder watched Lin Xiaoxiao disappear into the entrance of the spirit vein. His face gradually revealed a trace of strangeness, and then his figure flashed and quietly followed. At this time, at the entrance of the spirit vein, light emerged, and a vortex-like entrance appeared. Lin Xiaoxiao stepped in, and in an instant, she entered a vast and endless ocean. Under her feet, the turbulent sea water was constantly churning and roaring, and in the sky about 100 meters above her head, a huge disk was hanging, emitting brilliant light and illuminating the surroundings. This is a huge and unparalleled void moon. In this void moon, you can vaguely see the phantom of a saint floating, and each phantom of a saint exudes a power that transcends the heavens, which makes Lin Xiaoxiao tremble. Lin Xiaoxiao knew that this was the ancestor of the Piao Holy Palace and the relics left by generations of saints. Lin Xiaoxiao stood in this giant moon in the void, feeling as if she was in the core of the planet. Endless power poured in from all directions, gathered into a river, and poured into her body, strengthening her power. But Lin Xiaoxiao was not happy at all, because she still had a mission to do. In order to survive, she muttered to herself, took out the black date pit that Qin Mu had just given her, and looked at the shape of the date pit. She was a little at a loss. As soon as the black date pit appeared, the air in the whole space seemed to become extremely sticky, even making it difficult for her to breathe. What on earth is this thing? It actually contains such amazing energy. Feeling the tremendous energy contained in this black date core, she knew that what Qin Mu asked her to do was very dangerous and could even cost her life. But she had no choice. Because if she didn't do what Qin Mu said, she would be killed by Qin Mu immediately. No. I can't die, no matter what, I have to live. As long as I'm alive, I can practice slowly and improve my strength. One day, I will become as powerful as him, and then I can take revenge. Lin Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, and she finally made up her mind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 466. Lin Xiaoxiao took a deep breath, she slowly stretched out her hand, and slowly placed the black date core in the spiritual vein of Piao Holy Palace. When Lin Xiaoxiao placed the black date core in the spiritual vein, ripples suddenly appeared on the surface of the originally calm spiritual vein, and soon, it turned into circles of ripples visible to the naked eye. The ripples spread more and more rapidly, and finally formed a huge cylindrical hole. Once the hole was formed, the spiritual vein of the entire Piao Holy Palace suddenly rumbled, and the power in the spiritual vein began to boil. The originally calm spiritual energy turned into a huge wave and impacted the black date core. With a boom, the black date core burst into a dazzling red light, which instantly enveloped this space. The entire Piao Holy Palace seemed to shake, and endless spiritual power continued to pour into the black date core. With the infusion of a large amount of spiritual power, the light emitted from the black date core became more and more intense, more and more dazzling and eye-catching, and in the end, it completely submerged the entire space. This is a wonderful scene, as if something is about to break out of the cocoon. This scene is extremely strange, and Lin Xiaoxiao's heart twitched suddenly. Lin Xiaoxiao opened her eyes wide and stared nervously. Although she didn't understand what Qin Mu wanted her to do, her intuition told her that Qin Mu's actions must be extremely important, otherwise it would not have taken such a great effort. Now, the light released by the black date core almost completely swallowed up the entire spiritual vein, while the spiritual power inside the spiritual vein was still infused in an endless stream and swallowed by the black date core. As time went on, the red light emitted from the black date core became brighter and brighter. In the end, even Lin Xiaoxiao could no longer see the situation there clearly, and only saw a stream of light emitting from there. Lin Xiaoxiao felt an unprecedented strong breath brewing inside. This feeling made her body cold and she almost couldn't control the desire to escape from here. These lights lasted for nearly half a quarter of an hour before gradually fading away. When all the red lights disappeared, the black date pit was intact and turned back into an ordinary black date pit. Lin Xiaoxiao watched the black date pit return to its normal appearance and breathed a sigh of relief. Although it was only a short half a quarter of an hour, it made Lin Xiaoxiao feel like she had walked through the gates of hell. Lin Xiaoxiao let out a long sigh and thought to herself, it looks like it should be almost successful, right? After waiting for a while, Lin Xiaoxiao slowly approached and stretched out her fingers to gently touch the black date pit that had just returned to its original appearance. Just when her fingers just touched the black date pit, suddenly, she felt the black date pit tremble violently. Immediately afterwards, Lin Xiaoxiao was horrified to find that the black date pit suddenly emitted a piercing and sharp whistle. This whistle could penetrate gold and split stone. It could be heard clearly even from a long distance. In fact, this whistle was also demonic, making people shudder. Lin Xiaoxiao stood there like a wooden chicken, and a sentence came to her mind, "It's over, I must have been discovered." This whistle was so terrible that Lin Xiaoxiao felt as if her soul was frozen. Her legs were soft and she could no longer hold on. She sat down on the ground and fainted. At the same time, in the main hall of the Piamiao Holy Palace, Lin Changfeng, the great elder, listened to the report of the elders below, while using his spiritual sense to explore Lin Xiaoxiao's room, frowned slightly, and murmured, "How could this happen? Am I overthinking?" After his spiritual sense explored Lin Xiaoxiao's room, he found nothing, everything was normal. However, Lin Changfeng did not give up, but expanded the search range. He always felt that his granddaughter's behavior was strange, and there must be a reason behind it. Because he knew his granddaughter best, she was not a guy who loved cultivation at all. How could she take the initiative to ask to go into seclusion for cultivation? This was not his granddaughter's character at all. In addition, Lin Xiaoxiao's slightly panicked look at the time, all of which showed that there must be a reason behind this. Moreover, vaguely, Lin Changfeng always felt that someone seemed to be spying on him. He had this feeling a long time ago, but he had never figured it out. It seemed to be just an illusion of his. But until now, Lin Changfeng did not think that there was any accident in the Piamiao Holy Palace, or any dangerous creatures mixed in. Because the protective formation of the Piamiao Holy Palace was closely connected with his soul, he would immediately discover any disturbance, even if there was only a trace of power invading. Even the emperor could not sneak into this protective formation quietly, because the essence of this protective formation was to protect the main purpose. As long as he was alive, this formation would continue to operate. Unless he walked into the Piamiao Holy Palace openly, it would be impossible to hide it from him. But those who could walk into the Piamiao Holy Palace openly had to go through a series of inspections. Therefore, he did not think there was anything wrong with the Piamiao Holy Palace. Lin Changfeng's consciousness extended to the surroundings little by little, and soon covered the area of hundreds of miles around the Piamiao Holy Palace, and even extended further out. But after searching for a while, he still found nothing. Unconsciously, Lin Changfeng had searched the entire Piamiao Sea, but still found nothing. Finally, he shook his head and sighed, "Forget it, maybe I was wrong. Since she likes to practice, let her go. This is also a good thing." Lin Changfeng retracted his mind, but just as he was about to leave, his face suddenly changed. Huh, he looked up at the void, his eyes were extremely deep. A black fog suddenly appeared above the void, and two beams of cold light were faintly transmitted in the black fog, looking at him lightly. It was like a high god, looking down at him and all living beings like an ant. Lin Changfeng looked up, his face became solemn. "Interesting, dare to break into my Piamiao Holy Palace." Lin Changfeng sneered in his heart. He did not make a sound, but dismissed the elders who were reporting, and then quietly flew towards the void, and instantly arrived above the black cloud. "Who are you? Why are you spying on my Piamiao Holy Palace?" Lin Changfeng shouted coldly. His realm was beyond the ordinary and reached the peak level of the Saint realm. His words and deeds contained the rules of heaven and earth, and his power was infinite. But for the people in the black fog, there was no reaction, just staring at him quietly. Seeing this, Lin Changfeng raised his eyebrows slightly, and slowly raised his right palm. Suddenly, there was silence between heaven and earth, as if the end of the world had come. Endless stars flashed in the air, shining in all directions, and countless meteorites cut through the void and fell like raindrops. With a punch, the whole world collapsed, destroying the sky and the earth, and endless energy fluctuations surged towards the black cloud. The people in the black fog were still indifferent, as if they were frozen there, eternal and immortal, forever and ever. When countless energies flowed through, they all disappeared strangely. Impossible. Lin Changfeng was shocked, his face changed slightly. This punch was already the peak of his current strength, enough to crush mountains, and even a 7th level saint could be killed with one blow. Even if he met a warrior of the same level, he could fight, but he couldn't shake the man in the black fog at all. "Who are you?" Lin Changfeng shouted in a deep voice. Although the other party did not show up, his strength had definitely reached the 9th level of saint, and it had reached another incredible level. Lin Changfeng's heart skipped a beat. This person was really weird. He attacked again and punched out. The void twisted, and the thousands of feet of galaxies suddenly descended and submerged the black clouds. This blow almost extracted all the energy within a radius of 10,000 miles. Lin Changfeng's goal was just to force the other party back and make him reveal his true form. But the other party, however, lightly stretched out a finger and pointed at the surging galaxy. Then, the galaxy exploded, countless stars exploded and turned into dust, and the black fog covering the sky was not affected at all. The terrifying attack launched by Lin Changfeng was like ice and snow encountering the scorching sun, melting and disintegrating. "What?" Lin Changfeng was shocked. He. A light laugh came from the black fog. The laughter was melodious, but when it fell into Lin Changfeng's ears, it made his heart beat violently. "Who are you? Why do you want to break into my Biao Miao Saint Palace?" Lin Changfeng shouted in a deep voice. In the black fog, the man still did not answer, but suddenly, Lin Changfeng instinctively felt an extreme danger. He had not felt this sense of crisis for a long time. It can be said that since entering the saint realm, he has never felt such a terrifying sense of crisis again. Lin Changfeng's hair exploded all over his body, and almost instinctively, Lin Changfeng's body turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared suddenly. Puff. With this sound, half of the sky where Lin Changfeng was just now was directly annihilated into ashes. A dark arm stretched out from the space that was annihilated into ashes, with 5 fingers spread out, grabbing Lin Changfeng. "What?" Lin Changfeng was shocked and lost his voice. His speed was so fast that it was unbelievable. Even people at the 6th, 7th, and 8th levels of the saints could not catch up with him in a short moment. But now, he could not escape. This person's speed was too terrifying, unbelievable, far above him. Lin Changfeng did not dare to neglect it. He tried his best to use his body skills to try to avoid it. However, he sadly found that no matter how hard he tried to use his body skills, he could not get rid of this black claw. The black claw seemed to be everywhere, and it seemed to be everywhere. It was silent, yet fierce and swift. Once touched by it, it was like being bitten by lightning. In an instant, flesh and blood flew, bones burst, and blood splattered, which was extremely miserable. The speed of this black claw was too terrible. Even if Lin Changfeng tried his best to exert all his speed, he could not get rid of it. Finally, when the black claw appeared completely, Lin Changfeng's skin was torn and blood was blurred, which was horrible. Lin Changfeng's heart was full of huge waves. He never thought that there was a terrifying existence hidden in the Biao Miao Holy Palace. How could he not have heard of such a terrifying existence? But now was obviously not the time to think about it. Buzz. At the critical moment, Lin Changfeng sacrificed a copper seal. As soon as the copper seal appeared, it burst out with golden light, forming a dazzling light curtain that enveloped Lin Changfeng's body. With a loud clang, the arm collided with the copper seal, making a deafening sound, bang bang bang. The horrible explosion shook the earth, countless energies shot out, shaking the void, making the entire void tremble, as if it could not bear such a terrifying force. The copper seal trembled violently, and Lin Changfeng spit out a large mouthful of blood, retreating in a miserable state. In this confrontation, although Lin Changfeng managed to block the attack, he was also injured and his body was seriously injured. Lin Changfeng's body stood firm again 1,000 meters away, his face full of shock, and he was horrified. Impossible, even if it is the attack of a peak Saint ninefold strongman, I can avoid it, but you are, Quasi-Emperor. The opponent's strength is obviously above him. He is already at the peak of the Saint realm, and the opponent is obviously several levels higher than him. What does this mean? Lin Changfeng knows very well in his heart. Quasi-Emperor, that is a real immortal-like existence, a thought can change the rules of heaven and earth, reverse yin and yang, possess unimaginable power, and flatten a city in a snap of a finger. Although he is only one step away from Quasi-Emperor, this step is like a world away, and he can't take it at all, because his realm has been stagnant for more than 2 years, and he has been unable to pass that level. The difference between Quasi-Emperor and Saint is not a simple accumulation of cultivation, but a real qualitative transformation, which is like a carp leaping over the dragon gate. Quasi-Emperor. Lin Changfeng's expression is solemn, and his eyes are flashing with a strong fear. The Quasi-Emperor is too powerful. Just by momentum, he can make his life or death unpredictable. Even with his courage, he is a little afraid at this moment, because he is very sure that the black shadow in front of him must be a Quasi-Emperor. Quasi-Emperor, this kind of existence is enough to look down on the entire continent. It is the top powerhouse in this world. Looking at the entire human race, there are not many. Although their Piao Holy Palace is known as one of the strongest sects in Piao domain, it only has one Quasi-Emperor level strongman, and he cannot easily attack. Lin Changfeng did not expect that there would be a Quasi-Emperor here. Such a person is definitely the kind of old monster who hides in the world. Everyone is a living fossil and his combat power is unfathomable. It is the kind of terrifying existence that can cause a storm with a stomp of the foot. Even the Piao Holy Palace must deal with it seriously. Who are you? Lin Changfeng stared at the figure in front of him, and a deep fear surged in his heart. Lin Changfeng clenched his hands, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The opponent was too strong. He was not the opponent of this Quasi-Emperor at all. Even if he played all his cards, he might not be able to survive. It would be easy for the opponent to kill him. This made Lin Changfeng feel helpless. Do I need to ask the ancestor to help me? At this time, the person who had been silent in the black fog suddenly spoke. His voice was as cold as an eternal glacier. Originally I didn't want to take action, but since you jumped out, I'll deal with you first. Lin Changfeng was still frantically weighing the pros and cons in his heart, and then he heard the black shadow continue to say lightly. You don't want anything to happen to your granddaughter, right? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 467. What? You? Lin Changfeng's pupils suddenly dilated and his face turned pale. This sentence was like thunder, hitting Lin Changfeng's mind fiercely, making him tremble all over, as if falling into an ice cave. His eyes suddenly widened, his pupils shrank like a pinhole, staring at the black fog in front of him, gritting his teeth. What did you do to Xiao Xiao? It's nothing, just put something in her soul, the voice said lightly, with a hint of sarcasm and mockery in the tone, which shocked Lin Changfeng's heart. Hearing the other party's light tone, Lin Changfeng's hands suddenly clenched, his nails deeply sunk into his palms, but he seemed not to notice. Lin Changfeng's eyes were bloodshot, his whole face was hideous and terrifying, like a ghost, veins on his forehead bulged, and his fists were trembling slightly because he was too strong. His voice was extremely hoarse, like a curse from hell, with deep hatred and murderous intent, almost freezing the surrounding space. "What do you want to do?" Lin Changfeng asked with gritted teeth. "I don't want to do anything, just find a doll for myself," the voice said. "Doll?" Lin Changfeng was stunned, his eyes were as red as blood. "Who do you say is the doll?" "Of course it's the girl named Lin Xiaoxiao," the voice said unceremoniously, with a hint of playfulness in the voice. "She is very interesting, I like her very much, and I also named her doll sister." Hearing this, Lin Changfeng was silent, but the expression on his face became colder. At this moment, he exuded an extremely strong murderous aura, and the whole person seemed to have turned into a volcano about to erupt, with anger soaring to the sky. At this moment, he really wanted to kill. These years of experience have enabled him to practice the ability to remain calm. But at this moment, after hearing the other party's words, his anger could no longer be controlled, and he almost lost his mind. "I tell you, don't even think about hurting Xiao Xiao, otherwise I will make you live a life worse than death," Lin Changfeng roared in a hoarse voice, and every word seemed to contain infinite power. He. Hearing Lin Changfeng's roar, the other side seemed to be amused and couldn't help but sneer twice. "Do you think you can stop me with your current strength? Don't forget that my strength is stronger than yours. If I want, I can kill you in an instant," the voice said, full of disdain. Hearing this, Lin Changfeng's heart twitched violently, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly twice, his face turned ashen, and a sense of humiliation surged in his heart. He really couldn't beat the other party. Although he has now cultivated to the peak of the saint, his combat power is almost invincible in the world, but it is only almost. There are still many top masters hidden in this world, and there are even many old monsters living fossils among them. Each of these old monsters possesses a terrifying power that can reach the sky and the earth. Even if he just stands there motionless and allows Lin Changfeng to attack him hundreds of times, he can't be hurt at all. And the other party is such an existence. He knows his own strength. To the other party, he is just like an ant and can't make any waves at all. The other party can kill him thousands of times with just a wave of his sleeves. "Why, dare you threaten me? Do you believe that I will crush her soul immediately?" Seeing that Lin Changfeng was silent, the voice threatened again sinisterly. "You dare? You, actually set your sights on Xiao Xiao, you, bastard!" Lin Changfeng's mind roared, his eyes were bloodshot, his eyes were wide, his heart was beating wildly, and he wanted to rush over and tear this man into pieces immediately. However, reason told him that it was not possible now. This man was too powerful, far beyond the peak of the saint. Even if he tried his best, he might not be his opponent. "Sir, you are a quasi-emperor, but you actually bullied a little girl. If this gets out, it will probably be bad for your reputation." Lin Changfeng tried to calm down, staring at the hazy black shadow in front of him with his eyes. His tone was still as cold as iron, but his heart was already in a mess. He never thought that the other party would use his granddaughter as a threat, and he was doing such a despicable thing when he had an absolute advantage. This is simply too despicable and shameless, with no bottom line for a strong man. Lin Changfeng was burning with anger, his lungs were about to explode, and a murderous intent had even risen in his heart. He now understood why his granddaughter was so strange, and it must have been harmed by the man in front of him. Thinking of this, Lin Changfeng was angry and anxious, and his face was twisted and hideous. The anger and hatred in his heart swept over his body like a tide. "You're right, I don't think it's good either." Unexpectedly, the figure in the shadow nodded, seeming to agree with Lin Changfeng's words. Seeing this, Lin Changfeng showed a puzzled expression on his face. Why did the other party suddenly become so easy to talk to? However, the other party's next sentence made him dumbfounded instantly. The shadow's indifferent voice sounded again, with a very flat tone, "That's why I chose to hide my true body and not let people find it." Lin Changfeng. Lin Changfeng's mouth twitched, and he cursed in his heart. He didn't expect that the other party would be so shameless and dare to say such shameless words. He now seriously suspected that the other party was not a quasi-emperor at all, but a reincarnation of a gangster. Otherwise, how could he do such a heinous act? It simply refreshed Lin Changfeng's outlook and common sense. He couldn't help but take a deep breath, barely suppressing the anger in his heart, and after pondering for a moment, he calmed down. "Your Excellency, Xiao Xiao is still a child. Why are you having trouble with a child?" Lin Changfeng said solemnly. The black shadow smiled, "Who is not a child yet?" Lin Changfeng. He was convinced by the other party. Since the other party said this, it was obvious that he no longer wanted to let Xiao Xiao go. This made Lin Changfeng frown, think for a long time, and finally sighed. He knew that the other party was determined to make a fuss about Xiao Xiao and force him to submit. Therefore, even if Lin Changfeng is full of anger and murderous intent, it is difficult to vent it. After all, Xiaoxiao's fate is now in the hands of others, and he cannot resist at all. Unless he can reach the quasi-emperor level, he may be qualified to negotiate terms. But the reality is cruel. Although his cultivation speed is relatively unparalleled, it can only cross the threshold of the peak of the saint. He is still far from the quasi-emperor realm and requires a long time of accumulation. What's more important is that the other party is a quasi-emperor level existence, and may successfully overcome the tribulation at any time and become a true emperor. Such a superior existence cannot be shaken by Lin Changfeng at this stage. After Lin Changfeng took a few deep breaths, he tried his best to maintain a calm mood and asked coldly, "Tell me, what do you want to do?" Lin Changfeng thought with lightning in his mind and quickly analyzed the current situation. He didn't know the other party's purpose of controlling Xiao Xiao, nor did he know the other party's details. Therefore, he decided to listen to what the other party said first, and then look for the other party's flaws. After all, the other party's level is too high. If he acts rashly, he may not get any advantage, but will suffer a big loss, and even risk his and Xiaoxiao's lives. Lin Xiaoxiao is his only blood relative. No matter what, he will never let her get hurt, otherwise he will not forgive himself. "Haha, you are indeed smart enough." The man in black smiled and praised, "Yes, there is indeed one thing you need to do." "Say it," Lin Changfeng said coldly. He was relieved in his heart. The other party did not want to kill them all. This was a good sign. It's not that he's afraid of death, it's just that Xiaoxiao's life is now in the opponent's hands. If he fights recklessly, both sides will suffer. He believes that as long as the other party puts forward conditions, he will have a way to solve it. It's very simple. "As long as you surrender to me, I will let go of your granddaughter." The black shadow smiled softly, and his voice was ethereal and traceless, conveyed through the rich and misty devilish energy. Lin Changfeng's heart suddenly shook, he couldn't help but clenched his fists, and his face became serious. This guy, it's obvious that he wants to control him. Lin Changfeng's eyes were fierce, and his eyes were like knives. He stared coldly at the black figure opposite, and said slowly, word by word, "Impossible." Hearing this, Haiying laughed, with a smile full of teasing and sarcasm, "It makes me feel very difficult to reject him so simply." After a pause, the shadow sighed again, "It seems that I can only take your granddaughter away. Alas, she is so young but has a face as beautiful as a flower. What a pity." His tone was full of regret. Lin Changfeng's pupils shrank sharply, and a terrifying light shot out from his eyes. He exuded a fierce killing intent, gritted his teeth, and roared, Don't even think about it. Devil, you are a devil, you are despicable. At this moment, Lin Changfeng was furious and wanted to rush over and tear the black mist into pieces. Is it despicable? The voice sighed leisurely, and then said indifferently, the weak eats the strong, and the strong is respected. Who makes you have no strength? This is your only choice. Lin Changfeng clenched his fists tightly, and his bones crackled. He gritted his teeth and tried to control his impulse. His mood was extremely complicated. He wanted to save Xiao Xiao, but his reason told him that he must be calm, otherwise he would only fall into the trap of the other party. You are right, being weak is a sin, and the weak deserve to be punished. After a long time, Lin Changfeng raised his head, his face was as pale as paper, his lips trembled slightly, and he spoke in a hoarse voice. His whole body seemed to have been drained of his soul, and he was exhausted to the extreme. His voice was filled with helplessness, sadness, and deep regret. He regretted why he was not strong enough, which led to such a tragic result today. If his strength was strong enough, so what if the opponent was a quasi-emperor level existence? Lin Changfeng closed his eyes, took a deep breath, opened his eyes, looked resolutely at the black fog ahead, and said in a deep voice, "Okay, tell me, what do you want me to do?" Seeing Lin Changfeng compromise, the black figure seemed very pleased. He nodded and continued, "It's very simple. If you surrender to me, I will spare her life." Lin Changfeng's face was gloomy and his eyes were flickering. He was very angry and unwilling to give in. The other party was completely pushing him into a pit of fire. If he agrees to the other party's words, what awaits him will only be a disaster, and even the entire misty holy palace will be buried with him. However, if he doesn't agree to the other party's request, Xiao Xiao will only die. This difficult choice put Lin Changfeng into a dilemma. Just when Lin Changfeng was in a dilemma and hesitating, suddenly, a strange phenomenon occurred, and he saw the billowing demonic energy covering the magic mountain suddenly boiling and forming a huge wave. In the huge waves, a figure appeared vaguely. Xiao Xiao. Lin Changfeng suddenly woke up and looked over there hurriedly. Amidst the rolling waves, a figure that looked like a girl appeared. Her shawl-length hair was fluttering, her skin was white and crystal clear, as if it were about to burst open like a freshly shelled egg, and her beautiful face was dripping with tears, so touching and lovable. Surrounding her were countless tentacles transformed from demonic energy. These tentacles were intertwined and imprisoned in the center. Lin Changfeng looked at the girl, his eyes instantly turned red, and tears rolled out. "Grandpa," the girl looked at Lin Changfeng at the top of the magic mountain and called softly, her voice full of longing and grievance. "Xiao Xiao." Lin Changfeng stood up excitedly when he saw the familiar figure, shouted in a low voice, and rushed forward quickly. "Aha!" At this moment, the black figure suddenly moved. His speed was as fast as a wisp of smoke. He disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already standing in front of Lin Changfeng. The black mist dispersed, revealing the true face of the black shadow, a young man in his 20s. This young man is wearing a black robe. He has a tall and slender figure. He is extremely handsome. His skin is crystal clear, as if he was carved from a piece of rough jade. He is extraordinary and heroic. Every move he makes is full of domineering and arrogant. People can't help but look up at him. Feel. His face has sharp edges and corners, and his facial features are clear in outline, especially the proud and kingly aura between his eyebrows, which gives people a feeling of incomparable nobility. At this moment, he was looking at Lin Changfeng with a condescending gaze, with a playful smile on his lips. "How is it? Have you made a choice?" "Lin Xiaoxiu's soul is here, I can crush it at any time," Qin Mu said with a faint smile. He looked down at Lin Changfeng, as if looking at an ant. Lin Changfeng frowned, obviously not expecting that the other party would look so young. He originally thought that the other party would be an old monster, but now it seems that is not the case. But, isn't this too young? He was only in his 20s and didn't look threatening at all. However, the opponent's strength is extremely terrifying, far beyond that of ordinary quasi-emperors, making people fearful. Qin Mu glanced at him lightly and said, "Last chance. Surrender or be destroyed." His eyes were cold and murderous. Lin Changfeng struggled and struggled in his heart. Finally, he took a long breath, as if he had exhausted all his courage, and said solemnly, "I agree to your request from now on, but if you have any errands, please give me your instructions. I only have one request, let Xiao Xiao go." After saying these words, Lin Changfeng completely relaxed, and his whole body went limp, like a deflated rubber ball. Although he acted calmly, as if he didn't put his life at all, he was still extremely nervous inside, and he knew what such a choice meant. Once he makes a choice, he is doomed to eternal disaster, and even the entire Piao Holy Palace will suffer, because he betrayed the sect. "Very good, don't worry, I won't hurt anyone in your Miao Holy Palace, including your family." Qin Mu smiled lightly and said in a calm tone. "However, please relax your mind first, don't resist, and let this imprint be imprinted on your soul." Lin Changfeng felt bitter in his heart. He had no way to refuse and could only do what the other party said. Boom! Qin Mu stretched out his palm, and the majestic demonic energy condensed into a dark rune, which flew towards Lin Changfeng and merged into his forehead. Suddenly, a vast amount of information entered Lin Changfeng's mind. At the same time, Qin Mu also left here. After what he did, the misty holy palace was temporarily under his control. Because that magic core has polluted the spiritual veins of the Piao Holy Palace, it won't take long for the Piao Holy Palace to become his territory. Next, it's time to deal with the other sects in the Piao domain. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 468. It's a pity that we didn't get any information about the so-called road to immortality, but according to what Lin Changfeng said, the Misty Palace Master should know some inside information. It's hidden so deeply that even the Great Elder doesn't know about it. It seems that there is indeed something in this path to immortality. After leaving the Misty Holy Palace, Qin Mu looked at the endless misty sea outside and murmured to himself. After using Lin Xiaoxiao to successfully control Lin Changfeng, he immediately went to learn about the road to immortality, but he was disappointed. According to Lin Changfeng, this road to immortality did appear in the misty sea, but when it appeared, it was just a flash in the pan and disappeared quickly, so no one benefited. Not only that, but huge resources and manpower were spent, but in the end nothing was found. However, some people said that during that search, the owner of the Misty Holy Palace had found some traces. Unfortunately, she did not announce the news and remained silent. Moreover, the people closest to the master of the Piao Holy Palace also seemed to have some scruples, and they kept the road to becoming an immortal secret and did not mention much about it. Even Lin Changfeng, the great elder of Miao Holy Palace, knew nothing about the specific situation. Since there are traces of this path to immortality, it will definitely appear again. All we need to do is conquer the so-called master of the Misty Holy Palace. Qin Mu shook his head, retracted his thoughts, glanced in the direction of the Piao Holy Palace, and said coldly, "And the people in this sect are basically under my control. This area will be mine from now on. If there is any trouble, I will know it as soon as possible." The next second, a dark space vortex appeared, covering him instantly. He stepped into it and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! After a while, Qin Mu came to another new space. This is a desolate desert, boundless in all directions, with rolling yellow sand, and violent winds howling, taking away all the green plants, making this desert appear dead and desolate. Qin Mu looked around and frowned slightly. The richness of the spiritual energy here is far inferior to that of the misty holy palace, but compared to other places, it is still barely qualified, and it can be regarded as a treasured place for cultivation. Because this is the territory of the Golden Light Sect. The Golden Light Sect, one of the 5 major forces in the Piao domain, ranks at the bottom, but its foundation is very profound. There are more than a dozen strong saints in the sect. However, even though there are many strong men, the overall strength of the Golden Light Sect is still the weakest, because the other 4 major forces all have strong men at the quasi-emperor level. But over the years, the voice of the Golden Light Sect has gradually expanded, and there are more and more affiliated forces under its command, and it has become the overlord of the party. Especially in recent years, 2 monster-level figures have suddenly appeared in the Jingguang section. One of them is Jin Yi, the young master of the Jingguang section. He is known as a rare genius in the Jingguang sect for thousands of years. In just a few decades, his strength reached the realm of Dao killing. The other one is named Jin Peng, who is of the same monster level. He is much younger than Jin Yi, but he has already reached the cave void realm. He is one of the leaders of the younger generation of Jingguang sect, and is known as the one who can challenge the true quasi-emperor in the future. An outstanding person in the position. Moreover, it is said that his bloodline is extremely special and his combat power is astonishing. He once broke into an ancient place alone and killed 3 beast kings in the Dao slaying realm by himself. This terrifying record is enough to shock the entire Piao realm. Because of his achievements, he was favored by the top brass of Jingguang sect and was granted the title of Young Master, alongside Jin Yi. Later, he was given countless top-notch elixirs and martial arts skills, which allowed him to skyrocket in cultivation in a short period of time. He was successfully promoted to the Dao slaying realm and became the most dazzling being among the younger generation of the Golden Light sect. In addition to Jin Yi and Jin Peng, the Jingguang sect also has many outstanding geniuses, many of whom have outstanding qualifications. If these characters can be carefully cultivated, they may all be able to achieve the status of true saints in the future and become the overlord of a region. And these people are the future foundation of Jingguang sect. Therefore, although the Golden Light sect only occupies the borderland in the northern part of the Piao territory, no one dares to provoke them in the slightest. This time, Jin Yi and Jin Peng jointly represented the Jingguang sect to attend the centenary celebrations in the Daoxuan domain and visited some large forces along the way. This shows how high hopes were placed on the 2 of them. Of course, Qin Mu didn't care about these people. In his eyes, the Golden Light sect was not worth mentioning. In his opinion, the Golden Light sect is just like the misty holy palace, nothing more than ants. What he has to do now, his goal, is only one, which is to take advantage of the absence of the leader of the Golden Light sect to quietly conquer the Golden Light sect. Commonly known as home stealing. Piao domain is a large domain based on sects, and sects are far more important than dynasties and countries. If Qin Mu wants to unify the Piao territory, the Golden Light sect is extremely crucial and cannot be ignored. Don't worry, no one in the Piao realm can stop me anyway. Sooner or later, I will swallow up the entire Golden Light section. After looking around, Qin Mu smiled faintly, his figure swayed, turned into a streak of light, and quickly left the vast desert. The area where the Golden Light sect's main altar is located is who knows how far away from Qin Mu's location. Even if the saint flies at full strength, it will take several days. However, Qin Mu's speed was astonishing. It only took about half a day to arrive at the Golden Light sect's main altar. The main altar of the Golden Light sect is located on the top of a towering and steep mountain. It is thousands of feet high and gleams with brilliant golden light, like a scorching sun hanging on the top of the mountain. The entire main altar is very large, covering hundreds of thousands of acres. The buildings are magnificent and full of ancient and vicissitudes of life, just like an ancient tribe with a long history. A majestic energy fluctuation permeates the mountain, as vast as the ocean. This is the mountain protection formation of the Golden Light sect. Qin Mu's figure stayed on the periphery of the Golden Light sect's main altar. He looked up at the formation above, and a trace of solemnity appeared at the corner of his mouth. These mountain protection formations of super first-class forces are indeed extraordinary. The aura of the formation in front of him is very majestic, giving people a feeling of indestructibility, emitting brilliant divine light, as if it came from ancient times. Qin Mu stood in the distance and observed, and he could vaguely feel the surging law fluctuations. Such a magnificent mountain protection formation, even Qin Mu couldn't help but admire it. However, although these formations are extremely powerful, they cannot stop Qin Mu. As long as he wants, he can break through this formation in an instant and enter the main hall of the Golden Light sect, completely destroying this behemoth that has dominated the region for tens of thousands of years. After all, no matter how powerful the Golden Light sect's mountain protection formation is, how can it match his power? But Qin Mu doesn't want to do so. Because his goal this time is not only the Golden Light sect, but also the entire Piamiao domain. This time he sneaked into the Golden Light sect's main hall, not to destroy the Golden Light sect, but to quietly take the entire Golden Light sect into his pocket without exposing himself. Now the situation in Piamiao domain is stable. As a super first-class force, the Golden Light sect has a lot of influence in Piamiao domain. Once he destroys it, it will definitely cause an uproar. At that time, the major forces in Piamiao domain will definitely be vigilant and alert, and even the pattern of the entire Piamiao domain will change. This is obviously a troublesome thing for Qin Mu. Therefore, he must complete it quietly first, and not make too much noise. Qin Mu's eyes flickered, and he quickly locked onto a city close to the Jingguang sect's headquarters and rushed there. This city is called Xuanhuan City, because all the buildings in Xuanhuan City are made of anode stone, so it has such a strange name. Although Xuanhuan City is remote and backward, it is close to the Jingguang sect's headquarters, so it attracts many casual martial artists to come and make the city prosperous and populous. The disciples of the Jingguang sect go to Xuanhuan City every few days to purchase some necessities of life, and buy some treasures and spiritual tools and materials for refining elixirs. After Qin Mu arrived in Xuanhuan City, he changed his appearance a little, transformed into a handsome face, and then went straight to the trading place in Xuanhuan City. In front of the giant Jingguang sect, Qin Mu did not despise it too much, although with his current strength, the Jingguang sect's mountain protection formation could not stop him. But since he had decided to sneak into Chenkang, he naturally had to disguise himself. Qin Mu found a restaurant in Xuanhuan City, sat at a table, and drank leisurely. This small restaurant was quite large, enough to accommodate thousands of people at the same time. At this time, there were only a few diners in the restaurant, which seemed a little deserted. Qin Mu was too lazy to pay attention to these people, ordered some food casually, and stayed alone by the window. Not long after, a group of beautifully dressed maids in green brought wine and food. Qin Mu glanced at them, and then continued to taste the delicious food without saying a word. Soon, the number of diners in the restaurant gradually increased, and people kept coming, but no one dared to disturb him. But just when Qin Mu put down his chopsticks, suddenly, the originally quiet restaurant suddenly became noisy. Have you heard? The Golden Light sect is going to hold an auction in Xuanhuan City tonight. It is said that there will be many treasures for sale. What treasures? Could it be that some natural treasures have been born? Hee, you are so smart. But I heard that the things at the auction tonight are not simple. It is said that there will be immortal level elixirs. What? Immortal level elixirs? Is it true or not? This is a heaven-defying elixir that can help saints improve their realm. Of course it is true. It is said that the Golden Light sect obtained it from a secret realm. but it seems that the medicinal effect is not so strong anymore. Otherwise, how could it be auctioned? Tisk 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 tisk, that is also very precious. I really hope to bid for one. I wonder what the price is. Don't dream. How many of these precious things do you think there are? Immortal level elixirs. Hearing the discussions of the people around him, Xuanhuan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, his face slightly silent. Such elixirs are precious even in the 9 realms of the human race, and they have a fatal temptation for any strong man. It was beyond Xuanhuan's expectation that the Jingguang sect would have such an opportunity. But it gave him a chance to take advantage of it. "Waiter, check out," he called out. The waiter was busy greeting other customers. He ran over when he heard Xuanhuan's voice and said enthusiastically, "Sir, please wait a moment. It will be ready soon." After a while, the waiter hurried up. Xuanhuan took out 3 yuan crystals and handed them over. The waiter showed surprise on his face. He had been in Xuanyang city for quite a while and had seen countless people, but he had never seen such a handsome and generous young man. "Young master, take care. Wait a minute, I have something to ask you." Xuanhuan stopped the waiter who was about to leave. He lowered his voice and asked, "Do you know who is hosting this auction in the Jingguang sect?" The waiter shook his head. "I am only responsible for serving tea and water, how can I know the affairs of these high-level officials?" Hearing this, Xuanhuan chuckled and said, "It seems that I asked in vain. Don't worry, sir. Although I don't know who it is, according to the habit of the Jingguang sect to hold auctions in the past, it must be a core figure," the waiter added hurriedly. "Then have you heard about what rare treasures are there in this auction?" The waiter scratched his head. "I only know that the Jingguang sect has indeed made a lot of good things recently." Xuanhuan understood in his heart, and after asking a few more questions, he left. The waiter looked at his back as he left, and couldn't help muttering a few times, "At such a young age, he actually made such a bold move. This person is definitely not an ordinary rich kid. But this kind of thing has nothing to do with me." The waiter curled his lips and shook his head back to the restaurant. After leaving Xuanyang city, Xuanhuan went straight to a forest outside the Jingguang religion. This is a relatively remote area near the Jingguang religion, and few people come here on weekdays. After Xuanhuan arrived, he immediately called out Xuanhuan, Zhang Luoshan and other women. "Where are we going?" Xuanhuan opened her eyes wide and looked at Xuanhuan in confusion. Xuanhuan said lightly, "To rob." Xuanhuan's pretty face immediately showed an interested look when she heard this, and she said excitedly, "Where are we going?" "Jingguang religion." Xuanhuan uttered 3 words. "Ah!" Zhang Luoshan and others exclaimed when they heard this. It was their first time to come to the Jingguang religion's sphere of influence, and they had heard that there was an auction of fairy-level elixirs here, so they had been eager to try it out. They didn't expect Xuanhuan to take them directly to the Jingguang religion to rob things. "But it's not me who robs, but you rob, and then I'll come out to stop you." Xuanhuan smiled and explained. Xuanhuan blinked her eyes and nodded, not quite understanding. "You want to put on a show?" "Yes." Xuanhuan nodded, and then ordered, "You spread out now, remember, don't get discovered." Zhang Luoshan and others nodded in response, and then flew around according to Xuanhuan's instructions. After the women disappeared, Xuanhuan flashed and turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the depths of the woods, hiding his breath. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 469. Boom boom boom. A simple and solemn palace stands on the top of the mountain, filled with rosy clouds. The palace is brightly lit, with all kinds of exotic flowers and plants competing for beauty, and the air is filled with the rich and fragrant aroma of spiritual fruits. In the hall, an old man in brocade robes sits in the first seat, his face full of red light, his eyes shining. Beside him, there are hundreds of monks, all bowing their heads respectfully. The old man is Xuanhuan, the deputy leader of the Golden Light sect, a 9th-level sage monk. Beside him, there are several men and women with strong auras, all of whom are sage-level monks. They are the guardians and elders of the Golden Light sect, each of whom has practiced for more than 1,000 years and has extremely strong cultivation. In the center of the hall, there is a huge bronze tripod, which contains 5 dazzling pills containing huge life energy. It is the immortal level pill. The Golden Light sect has a long heritage and profound cultural heritage. The so-called wealth and power are perfect here. Xuanhuan looked around and said majestically, "I called you here to select the person who will host this auction. Do you have any recommendations?" As soon as he finished speaking, there was a noisy discussion below. Obviously, everyone's minds were active and they wanted to participate in the competition and fight for this honor. After all, it is a great honor to be able to host the auction, not to mention that there are many rare treasures in this auction. Deputy Leader, I will host this auction in person, what do you think? Just then, a loud voice suddenly resounded throughout the hall, making people's eardrums buzz. A burly and majestic figure stepped out, his blood-stained clothes fluttering, and he was surrounded by a monstrous murderous intent, which was suffocating. This person is Yin Tao, the law enforcement hall master of the Jingguang section. His cultivation has reached the level of a half-step saint, and he is only one step away from truly entering the realm of saints. Humph. Master Yin, you have a big appetite. On the left side of Xuanhuan, a middle-aged man in green snorted coldly, staring at Yin Tao with gloomy eyes. This man is Wang Tian, the right guardian of the Golden Light section. He is also a master of the half-step saint realm. His strength is not weaker than Yin Tao. The two have been fighting openly and secretly for many years. Yin Tao sneered, "Wang, if you want to compete, I will accompany you." You, the middle-aged man in green was furious, but he suppressed it in the end. His cultivation is the same as Yin Tao, both are half-step saints. Now the outcome of the fight is unpredictable. The two looked at each other, and the air was filled with sparks. Deputy Leader, since you have gathered us here, you must have already chosen someone. Why not tell us so that everyone can be mentally prepared in advance? A vigorous and powerful voice suddenly came from below. Haha, in that case, Xuanhuan laughed, how about this matter be presided over by my disciple Jin Can? As soon as Xuanhuan finished speaking, a delicate and charming figure walked out from the corner of the hall. It was Jin Can. Jin Can looked about 28 years old, wearing a long green dress, with a hint of cunning between her eyebrows, looking like a real elf. She quickly looked around, then her eyes stopped on Yin Tao, waved her hand playfully, and shouted crisply, "Hello Uncle Yin, hello Uncle Wang." Yin Tao and Wang Tian nodded slightly, and then shut up. Others have been selected, so why are they fighting for it? Haha, Jin Can is my only direct disciple. She grew up with me since she was a child. She has a simple personality. I hope everyone can tolerate her. Xuanhuan laughed loudly, quite kindly. Jin Can's pretty face was shy and lowered her head. She was shy and silent, but her beautiful eyes were rolling around. Master, when will the auction of pills begin? Jin Can couldn't help asking, with a look of anticipation on his face. Right away. Xuanhuan stroked his beard and said. Then, Xuanhuan raised his arm and aimed at the tall bronze tripod behind him. Instantly, a dazzling white light burst out from the surface of the bronze tripod, and then the bronze tripod slowly rose into the air and hovered above everyone's heads. Buzz, an extremely surging and majestic life wave escaped from the bronze tripod, filled with vast and unpredictable energy. The bronze tripod suddenly cracked, revealing several purple gold pills the size of longan. Hiss. Feeling the terrifying life wave escaping from the bronze tripod, a sound of sucking in cold air suddenly rang out in the hall, and many people became short of breath. Jin Yuan Kui opened the box, put the pill in it, handed it to Jin Can, and gently instructed, Can, you must host it well. I know, Master. Jin Can responded sweetly, and couldn't wait to take the pill and put it in his arms. Ding ding. The crisp bell sounded suddenly, with a bit of dullness and solemnity, echoing throughout Wanyang City, lingering for a long time, and reaching the hall. Hearing the bell, Jin Yuan Kui raised his eyebrows and shouted in a deep voice, the time has come, the auction can start. As Jin Yuan Kui's voice fell, many monks in the hall stood up and walked out of the hall. An old woman in a grey robe, with white hair and a childlike face, walked out of the crowd, with a solemn expression, without saying a word, and walked out of the hall. She is the third elder of the Jingguang sect, who is in charge of this auction. In Wanyang City, the Jingguang sect has the most powerful power, and all the sects and families are afraid of it. The third elder is the most respected person in the Golden Light section. She rarely takes care of worldly affairs on weekdays. She only appears when she encounters a crisis or needs help. In addition, her own strength is very terrifying. She has already reached the 8th level of the saint. Unless the helmsmen of the other 4 major sects in the Misty Domain come, no one dares to cause trouble. Although Jin Can is still young, she is the disciple of the deputy leader. No one dares to offend her, even if they are saint-level strongmen. Therefore, Jin Can's appearance did not cause much sensation. The auction was hosted by the 2 of them, and others dared not raise any objections even if they had any objections. Jin Can acted decisively. After getting the elixir, she followed the third elder and left without any hesitation. Although she was young, she was not shy. This girl really didn't disappoint me. Jin Yuan Kui stroked his beard and smiled. It can be seen that he was very satisfied with Jin Can. Deputy leader, should we go and see? Wang Tian came over and asked softly. With the third elder and Can, we don't have to go. Jin Yuan Kui looked at the grey-robed old woman, smiled faintly, and sat on the chair without moving. The deputy leader is right. With the third elder here, no one dares to make trouble. Yin Tao laughed in agreement, and he sat down without getting up. Seeing this, the others also sat down and closed their eyes to practice. With the third elder here, no one dared to make trouble, not even the 7th or 8th level saints. Wanyang City. Jingguang Auction House, at the gate. Figures appeared here one after another, all of them were invited guests. Each of the invited guests was extraordinary, prominent, and unfathomable, at least in the realm of Jean Dao. Their identities were either rich or noble, and their status was transcendent. A strong aura swept through the crowd, shocking the whole audience. Jin Can looked at the giant auction table in the center of the hall, her eyes flashing with excitement, her face slightly flushed. It was the first time for her to host an auction of this scale, and she was a little excited. Everyone, welcome to the Jingguang Auction House. The treasures for this auction are of high grade and large scale, so you need to wait for a moment. Let me introduce them. Jin Can said sweetly, first, let me introduce the final treasure of this auction. There are 5 of them, all of which are fairy-level elixirs. Jin Can held a wooden box in her jade hand, walked slowly to the top of the auction table, and then opened the wooden box. 5 purple gold elixirs were placed in the wooden box, and the whole body was overflowing with crystal clear purple gold luster, as if they were cast from crystal. The 5 elixirs were arranged in a half-moon shape, and there was a strange and mysterious atmosphere between them. 9 lifelike lotus patterns were engraved on the elixirs, and each of them exuded a charming fragrance, which was intoxicating. Immortal grade elixirs. They are really immortal grade elixirs. People were amazed. Some cultivators stared at the 9 immortal grade elixirs with their eyes fixed on them. They swallowed their saliva greedily and wanted to rush forward to grab them immediately. Immortal grade elixirs are rare and priceless. I think everyone has seen it, right? Jin Kankan continued to laugh. These 9 elixirs are called Juyeo Guiling pills. They are powerful and are essential for breaking through the realm. Juyeo Guiling pills. No wonder there is such a wonderful fragrance. It turns out to be Juyeo Guiling pills. People were boiling again. Regardless of their cultivation level, they became fanatical and excited at this moment. It is worthy of being an immortal grade elixir. It is simply a priceless treasure. It is said that after taking immortal grade elixirs, there is a great probability that the cultivation level will be doubled. Although the medicinal properties of these elixirs have been lost by more than half, they are still extremely precious. Everyone was talking about it, their eyes were burning, like hungry wolves, and they wanted to pounce on them immediately. Everyone, be quiet and listen to me. Jin Kankan waved her little fist and shouted, and the crisp voice spread throughout the venue. The preciousness of the immortal level elixir is beyond doubt. As the first business alliance in Huanyang City, our Jingguang sect is absolutely fair and honest when it comes to auctioning such things. Jin Kankan continued to explain, her pretty little face was filled with a bright smile, making people unable to help but look at it twice. She paused and continued, in addition to these immortal pills, we have also prepared other precious auction items. I hope everyone can return with satisfaction. The crowd showed a curious look, and their eyes looked at the auction table in unison, full of expectations. The Jingguang sect has always had a good reputation, and the things they put out for auction must be extraordinary. After hearing Jin Kankan's words, the whole audience instantly quieted down, and everyone looked at Jin Kankan, looking forward to the next matter. Seeing this, Jin Kankan playfully stuck out her tongue and said with a sweet smile, I declare that the auction is officially open. Wow! As soon as the voice fell, the hall suddenly became noisy, and everyone's eyes were all looking at the auction table. Jin Kankan gestured with her hand, and immediately a maid carried a wooden box to the auction table. Next, I will show you the first item of the auction. Jin Kankan smiled proudly and stretched out her hand to open the box. As the wooden box was opened, a black stone tablet was placed in the center of the box. The stone tablet was extremely black, and it was written with ancient and vicissitudes of life. There were many lines engraved on the surface of the stone tablet, which seemed to be the lines of the formation, giving people a mysterious feeling. What is this? Why is it being auctioned here? This shouldn't be an ordinary stone tablet, right? The crowd whispered, looking at the stone tablet curiously, guessing its purpose. Everyone, I believe you have noticed that this black stone tablet is a formation. Jin Kankan smiled and said, this stone tablet is called Tianqian Formation Tablet, which is the treasure of Tianqian section. The pupils of the crowd suddenly shrank, and their faces showed strong interest. They looked eager to try and wanted to know the function of this Tianqian Formation Tablet. Tianqian sect is a top force, which has been dominating the Piamiao domain for thousands of years and has a profound foundation. As the treasure of the top force, the value of the Tianqian Formation Tablet is naturally self-evident. Of course, some people kept a calm attitude. They were all old monsters who had lived for thousands or even thousands of years and had seen too many storms. Jin Kankan glanced at the crowd and continued to introduce, the stone tablet contains a set of extremely profound formations with amazing power. As long as you control the formation, you can manipulate a huge killing formation with amazing lethality and destroy everything. And the function of the Tianqian Formation Tablet is different from other formations. It not only has the effect of attack, but also defense and trapping the enemy, and can even block the space. Block the space, the crowd was shocked again. Space, what is space? It is illusory and unpredictable, so it is honored as the void. A formation that blocks space is enough to make anyone crazy. The reserve price of this auction is 80,000 spirit crystals. Jin Kankan said with a smile. His 80,000. So expensive. 80,000 spirit crystals, even if you sell me, I can't afford one. The crowd took a breath again, scared to death. Although the Tianqian formation tablet is indeed very precious, the price of 80,000 spirit crystals is too exaggerated, and there is no way to compete. Everyone shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Who would be willing to spend the horrible price of 80,000 spirit crystals to buy such an expensive item? Besides, it was just an appetizer. There were still many auction items that had not been unveiled. They were unwilling to give up their bottom line now. Seeing the shocked and dazed expressions of the crowd, Jin Kankan's mouth curled up slightly, and he smiled and said, "Everyone, to be honest, the power of the Tianqian Formation Monument is far more than this. It has more abilities." As soon as Jin Kankan's voice came out, the whole audience fell into a brief silence, and soon a more intense discussion broke out. 81,000. 83,000. I'll pay 90,000. In a short moment, the price of the Tianqian Formation Monument rose steadily and quickly reached 120,000. So crazy. This is still the first auction item. Aren't the things behind it even more terrifying? It's worthy of being a top force. It's generous and enviable. While praising, people sighed that these forces were financially strong. 1,500,000, at this moment, a vigorous and domineering voice resounded throughout the hall. Hearing this voice, everyone stopped bidding instantly. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, and their eyes were focused on an old man. The old man had white hair and beard, wore gorgeous robes, had a ruddy complexion, bright eyes, and a strong aura. He was a super strong man. 160,000. Then another voice came. 200,000. Another indifferent and calm voice came from VIP room number 11. Hearing such a high price from VIP room number 11, the old man frowned, his face became solemn, and he remained silent. "Haha, this is just the beginning, you don't have to rush to bid, take your time." A light voice came from VIP room number 11. The old man thought about it, and finally chose to give up. Jin Kankan looked at the smooth start and secretly breathed a sigh of relief, smiling and saying, "Since there are no other bidders, this Tianqian Formation steel belongs to the owner of VIP room No 11. Let us congratulate the senior in VIP room number 11 for this opportunity. May I ask this senior, is it convenient for you to pay the spiritual crystal now?" Speaking of this, Jin Kankan was also a little nervous, fearing that the other party could not afford it and ruin the deal. Although this possibility is very small, it has happened in previous years. Especially, the voice of the VIP room number 11 sounded very young, which made her heart even more nervous. After hearing Jin Kankan's words, the crowd was a little curious about who was in VIP room number 11. Before Jin Kankan continued to think wildly, the door of VIP room number 11 opened. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 470. A dazzling ray of sunlight shone through, causing the crowd to squint their eyes. When the light disappeared, a young man came into their sight, wearing a clean black shirt, with a gentle smile on his handsome face. The boy was about 18 or 19 years old, with an outstanding temperament, as if he was a perfect masterpiece created by nature. Seeing the strange young man who suddenly appeared, everyone was stunned. Who is this person? How come I've never seen him before? I don't know. I guess he's a disciple of a big family or force. After all, he has such a high level of cultivation at such a young age. He must be a genius cultivated by a hidden family. He should be here for the Tianqian Formation Monument. It is said that it takes a lot of energy for a formation master to set up a formation. Can he do it? I think it's uncertain. The formation set up by the formation master is countless times more complicated than ordinary martial arts. Even for a strong man in the Jean Dao realm, it is very difficult to master the formation, let alone this high-level formation. I think this young man is interesting. Although I don't know him, the person who can sit in the VIP room number 11 is definitely not a simple person. The crowd looked at the young man, whispering and talking constantly, all speculating on the young man's true origin. My goodness, this young man is too handsome, the woman next to him couldn't help but make a crazy voice. He is really handsome, more handsome than those saints, another woman echoed, her eyes full of peach blossoms, her mind full of various fantasies. Are you the senior from VIP room No 11? Looking at the young man approaching, Jin Cancan's eyes flashed with surprise, but she asked with a slightly puzzled tone. Because the other party looked too young, and his cultivation didn't seem to be very strong, could he really pay 200,000 spirit crystals? You know, 200,000 spirit crystals is definitely not a small amount. There are not many forces in Piamiao domain that can afford it, but she almost knows the young generation of each force, but the other party's appearance is very unfamiliar, and she thinks he is not from Piamiao domain. Jin Cancan is very sure of this, because if a man with such a look appeared in a sect in Piamiao domain, then she would definitely not be unaware of it. The young man nodded slightly and smiled, "It's me." Jin Cancan bowed slightly and said, "Wait a moment." The young man waved his hand casually, then shifted his gaze to the old man just now, and said, "Since you don't participate, it belongs to me." The old man snorted with a gloomy face, and ignored the young man. Seeing this scene, the surroundings suddenly exploded. This guy actually dared to challenge Mr. Li, he's really brave. He, I guess he's just a newborn calf who's not afraid of tigers. He doesn't even know the rules here. He's young, but he's quite courageous. But 200,000 spirit crystals are no joke. The crowd was talking, obviously admiring the fact that the young man dared to compete with the old man and challenged him after the fight. Of course, most people were just watching the fun. "Sir, this is the formation diagram and record of the Tianqian Formation Monument." Jin Cancan handed the wooden box containing the Tianqian Formation Monument to the young man. The wooden box opened, and a palm-sized stone tablet appeared in front of the young man. It was dark, simple and vicissitudes, and full of rich soul fluctuations. The young man stretched out his slender white right hand, slowly took over the Tianqian Formation Monument, a faint smile appeared on his face, and put the Tianqian Formation Monument into the storage ring without even looking at it, as if it was just a trivial thing. Then he smiled and thanked her, "Thank you." Then the young man took out the storage ring and threw it to Jin Cancan, smiling lightly, "This is a spirit crystal." "Thank you for your support, young master," Jin Cancan said with a sweet smile, and she was very excited. 200,000 spirit crystals. This was her first successful transaction, so she was naturally very excited, and it was also her performance. With such performance, I believe that the elders and deacons in the sect who have always had opinions about her will no longer say anything. Jin Cancan picked up the storage ring to check, and was stunned and couldn't say a word. "What's wrong? Isn't it 200,000 spirit crystals?" The people around were all puzzled. Jin Cancan's reaction seemed a little too big. After a brief shock, Jin Cancan recovered and immediately explained, "Young master, did you make a mistake? There are 2 million spirit crystals in it." Hearing this, the whole audience was in an uproar, and everyone was dumbfounded. Damn! This kid is really rich. He can take out 2 million spirit crystals with a wave of his hand. He's crazy, absolutely crazy. No matter how you look at it, this boy is only at the peak of the Yuanshen realm. How could he take out 2 million spirit crystals at once? Who is this boy? Why haven't I seen him before? He actually has such a terrifying wealth. Who is he? The cultivators present were all confused. They couldn't imagine where the boy came from and how he could take out so many spirit crystals. Everyone exclaimed, and their eyes turned to the young man, full of fear, and even mixed with envy and jealousy. 2 million spirit crystals. How much money is that? Enough to buy a city. Not to mention them, even the third elder of the Jingguang sect who was hiding in the dark was a little surprised. I'm afraid this kid has more than 2 million in his hands now, the third elder muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with a strange light. Under the gaze of the third elder, the young man blinked and said, "Oh, I just think it's too much trouble to bid one by one. I also want to auction the next collection. You can just deduct the spirit crystals as you see fit. It only needs to be 10,000 more than the highest price." Hearing this, everyone present was stunned, suspecting that they had heard it wrong. What did this boy say? He wants to auction off all the remaining treasures. Oh my God, where does he get the confidence from? I feel that this kid is deliberately making trouble. Just 2 million spirit crystals are enough to buy all the remaining collections. Isn't this a bit too wishful? People couldn't believe that the boy actually wanted to auction off all the treasures. His appetite was too big. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death? After all, the remaining treasures are all top level, each of which is extremely precious, and there are 5 immortal level elixirs among them. Immortal level elixirs are so rare that ordinary practitioners are not qualified to buy them. It is difficult to buy them all with just 2 million spirit crystals. Jin Can almost choked when she heard this, her pretty face flushed, and she coughed a few times. Cough cough. She didn't expect the boy to make such a request. Although 2 million spirit crystals are not a small amount, it is nothing to her. After all, she was also a disciple of the vice leader of the Golden Light sect, and she could barely afford 2 million spirit crystals. Young master, are you sure you want to auction off the remaining collections with 2 million spirit crystals? Jin Can asked. The young man nodded gently and said, yes. Jin Can shook his head with a wry smile. She really couldn't understand where the young man got his confidence from. These 2 million might buy a few pieces, but definitely not all. She hesitated for a moment, wanting to remind him, but afraid of hurting the young man's self-esteem. Everyone was talking about it, and all of them showed a mocking and disdainful look on their faces. Little brother. At this moment, the gray-robed old man called Li Lao stood up, with a threatening look in his eyes, and said in a low voice, I advise you to stop, otherwise don't blame us for being rude. He didn't bring many spirit crystals, and the purpose of this trip was to bid for the auction items that were not expensive in front. As a result, he was going to be taken away by this young man, so wouldn't he come here in vain? The young man raised his eyebrows, looked at the gray-robed old man with interest, and asked, what? Do you still want to rob? The gray-robed old man's mouth twitched. Although he had lived for nearly 1,000 years, his actual cultivation level was only the 4th level of the way of slashing. How could he dare to rob the auction items in the territory of the Golden Light sect? I warn you not to be too presumptuous, the gray-robed old man suppressed his anger and said in a deep voice. He, what if I want to be presumptuous? The young man grinned and did not take the gray-robed old man's warning seriously at all. Then he looked at Jin Can again and said lightly, if it's not enough, there are more here. As soon as the voice fell, the young man took out a few more storage rings and threw them to Jin Can. Jin Can was stunned, and then he realized that the young man had more than 2 million spirit crystals in his hand. Young master, please wait a moment, I will help you settle the account immediately. She bowed respectfully, then walked quickly to the counter and began to count the spirit crystals in the storage ring. When she saw the number, Jin Can was completely stunned, her face full of horror. This, how is this possible? Jin Can's delicate body trembled, her beautiful eyes widened, unbelievable. At this moment, she felt that her worldview had completely collapsed. Because the number of spiritual crystals that the boy took out was a full 90 million spiritual crystals. These spiritual crystals are all real. Jin Kankan carefully identified them and confirmed again that these spiritual crystals were all real. Her heart inevitably beat wildly, her pretty face was as pale as paper, her delicate body trembled slightly, she couldn't believe her eyes, and her head was roaring. Jin Kankan had never seen such a huge number of spiritual crystals. 90 million spiritual crystals piled up into a mountain, filling these storage rings, emitting a gorgeous and dazzling colorful glow, dazzling her eyes, suffocating her, and stagnate on the spot. Such a scene made her deeply fall into shock and loss of consciousness. 90 million spiritual crystals. This is simply indescribable. This is a huge fortune that she has never imagined in her life. Jin Kankan felt like she was dreaming, everything seemed so unreal, as if she was in a dream world. At this moment, she felt like she was flying in the clouds, so happy that she couldn't find the north. What happened? Why did you stop? Yes, why are you standing there stupidly? Everyone cast doubtful eyes, very confused, not knowing what Jin Kankan was doing. Kankan, what's wrong? The third elder's eyes flickered and he said in a voice transmission. Under the gaze of everyone, Jin Kankan slowly came back to her senses and immediately said excitedly, "Third elder. The young master, he has 90 million spirit crystals." What? 90 million spirit crystals? Hearing this, the third elder's eyes widened in astonishment, his face became extremely wonderful, and he even suspected that he had hallucinations. She suspected that she had heard it wrong, and immediately asked, "Kankan, say it again." Third elder. The young master has 90 million spirit crystals. Jin Kankan's tone was firm, word by word, without any impurities. This sentence was like a thunderbolt from the blue sky that exploded in the crowd, making their minds go blank and sluggish. 90 million spirit crystals. What on earth is this? Hiss. The silent scene was filled with gasps again, and countless people stared at Jin Kankan with their eyes wide open, all stunned. 90 million spiritual crystals. This is comparable to a giant spiritual vein, or even more. 90 million spiritual crystals. It's enough to support a top sex cultivation for hundreds or even thousands of years. At this moment, the scene was completely silent, so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Everyone looked at the young man with horrified faces, their expressions were frozen, their eyes were dull, their hearts twitched hard, their whole bodies were as cold as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, the chill swept through their bodies, as if they had been struck by lightning, and they could not react for a long time. 90 million spiritual crystals. Everyone here, I'm afraid they don't have 90 million spiritual crystals in total, right? Everyone was stunned, and only the words 90 million spiritual crystals were left in their minds. They had never heard of anyone possessing such terrifying wealth. Even the holy son of the most powerful sect in the Deoxuan domain wouldn't have 90 million spiritual crystals in his hands, right? Who is this young man who appears out of nowhere to actually have such a huge wealth? I wasn't dreaming, was I? So many spiritual crystals are all on him. Oh my God. 90 million. I guess I will never earn so many spiritual crystals in my life. Be confident, you won't be able to earn it in the next life. Is this guy some kind of rich man? 90 million spiritual crystals. Even our sect may not be able to produce them. Which family saint is this kid from? After a brief silence, the scene erupted into bursts of noise, like boiling water boiling, and it was very lively. Everyone's eyes are filled with greed, envy, and jealousy. This level of spiritual crystal was beyond their understanding. Gilug, a monk swallowed hard, his mind trembling. His throat felt dry and he felt like crying. They actually laughed at someone just now. They didn't recognize the real rich man standing in front of them. Do they still have the right to laugh at him? Gilo, Mr. Li swallowed hard, his face twitching wildly, his liver and gallbladder splitting with fright, and his heart beating wildly. At this time, the old man in grey robe finally understood that this young man was really a super rich man. But the news was so exciting that he couldn't accept it for a while, and his mind went blank. Ahem, after a long while, the grey-robed old man coughed twice, forced to suppress the shock in his heart, and asked with a flattering smile on his face, "Little brother, may I ask your name?" The young man was too lazy to talk nonsense to the old man. He turned to look at Jin Kankan and asked, "Are these spiritual crystals enough?" "Ah, that's enough, that's enough. Of course it's enough." Jin Kankan suddenly came back to his senses and answered hurriedly, his attitude even more respectful than before, even slightly flattering. "Then let's continue the auction," the young man said calmly, then turned and returned to VIP room number 11. Seeing this, everyone was stunned again. This guy just left. He just handed over 90 million spiritual crystals like this? Looking at the young man's leaving figure, Jin Kankan's eyes were fiery and he said with admiration, "Young master is indeed extraordinary, even his personality and temperament are different. He is so handsome." She didn't know what she thought of, and couldn't help but tighten her legs slightly, her face flushed with embarrassment. After the young man walked into the VIP room number 11, he was in a good mood. I finally experienced the pretentious feeling of the auction in the novel. It was really comfortable. The corners of Qin Mu's mouth curved and he smiled brightly. He had long wanted to experience this feeling, and today was a dream come true. Next, it's time for them to appear. Qin Mu looked in the direction of the outer door of the auction hall and murmured to himself, with a smile still hanging on his lips. It's just that this smile is a little more dangerous than before.